Early morning. As soon as he opened his eyes, Barton subconsciously looked at Steve, who was guarding in front of the three computers. Wake up? No word from Natasha Romanoff yet. Watching Clint open his eyes, Steve spoke. The same frequency signal of the three running computers is connected to the life detector on Natasha Romanoff's wrist. In other words, as long as Natasha Romanoff removes a part of the life detector, it can be easily transformed into a telegraph device to send signals here. Last night was divided into 3 sections, with Tony, Barton and Steve taking turns sitting in front of the computer to guard. Everyone knows, as long as Natasha Romanoff's signal comes back, then it's a big battle to meet the Avengers. So before the battle, we must raise our spirits, and we can't let a person go to the robot to fight desperately without sleeping all night. Although, doesn't seem to be a big problem for Avengers Alliance members. Go and wash up. Sue has already prepared breakfast for everyone. Watching Barton fully awake, Steve said with a smile. Good. Nodding, Clint got up from the makeshift bed, and then walked to the bathroom. After more than 10 minutes, after washing up, Barton came over with a cup of coffee and breakfast. Captain, you go to have breakfast first, I'm right here. Faced with Barton's offer to replace him, Steve nodded. Although he also understands some messaging similar to Morse code. But after all, Barton and Natasha Romanoff are the most professional in this aspect. At the table. Watching Steve approaching, Tony picked up a breakfast and handed it to him. Still no news? Well, but this is also a good thing, at least it proves that Natasha Romanoff is not in danger at the moment. After taking the breakfast and thanking him, Steve replied. This answer is mainly aimed at Wanda. After all, at the dinner table, everyone is a little worried about Natasha Romanoff's situation. But Wanda is undoubtedly the one who worries Natasha Romanoff the most. Listening to Steve's answer, Wanda lowered her head and continued eating her breakfast. Everyone had just eaten half of their breakfast when they saw Clint walking over immediately. Everyone, Natasha Romanoff has sent the news. She doesn't know where she is at the moment, but after locking the location through the satellite according to the password that the two of us often use, we found that it is in Brown. Bray. As he spoke, Clint raised his head and looked at the crowd. Do you know exactly where that Buckley is? I couldn't find it on the map at all. Faced with Barton's inquiry, the others also shook their heads, having never heard of this place at all. Only Tony Stark's expression changed. Damn it, Ultron found it there. Tony, do you know where Buckley is? Seeing that Tony seemed to know the location, Steve asked immediately. I know. This has something to do with my father. You must know that many places in this world are not marked on the Earth, and Buckley is one of them. Putting down breakfast, Tony explained. My father once complained to my mother that the World Security Council above S.H.I.E.L.D. hoped that my father and S.H.I.E.L.D. would take the lead in establishing and developing a light-guided weapon. At that time, although my father wanted to refuse, but due to the pressure from the World Security Council on S.H.I.E.L.D., he could only compromise. Then after selection, I finally chose Buckley, which is located in the Middle East. Then, the development of light-guided weapons failed, and it was precisely because of this failure that S.H.I.E.L.D. decided to cut off the resolution of directly following the orders of the World Security Council. Then S.H.I.E.L.D. became what it is today, and the World Security Council has only jurisdiction but no substance. Tony, get to the point. Listening to Tony's words, Steve asked Tony to focus directly. The point is, where is now a no man's land? Looking at the crowd, Tony Stark said seriously, the failure of light-guided weapons back then was not only due to the development, but also man-made sabotage. From now on, it should be the group of Hydra led by Alexander Pierce, a member of. The failure of the light-guided weapon has turned the entire Buckley into a no man's land. Speaking of this, Tony Stark said seriously, by the way, you all know how harmful the mushroom power station leak is. Hearing what Tony said, everyone at the table nodded. In fact, the consequences of the leakage caused by the failure of the light-guided weapon back then were more than 10 times the harm of the mushroom power station. According to subsequent statistics, a total of 93 scientific research personnel and more than 300 S.H.I.E.L.D. agents died in S.H.I.E.L.D. The number of S.H.I.E.L.D. bureaus who died within 2 years of radiation contamination also exceeded people. That is to say, all the people in S.H.I.E.L.D. about Buckley died without exception. And civilians. Halfway through the speech, Tony Stark shook his head. That accident killed at least more than 100,000 people, and it also made the whole of Buckley an uninhabited place. Oh my God. God. Hear Tony Stark tell the story of this untold past. All the people present gasped. Tony, those more than 300,000 civilians. Looking at Tony, Dr. Banner hesitated for a moment before asking the question. I was only halfway through the question, but I saw Tony shaking his head. The population of Buckley is more than 400,000. At that time, When S.H.I.E.L.D. was conducting light-guided weapon experiments, it only moved more than 100,000 to make room for it. As for the remaining 300,000 people, anyway, according to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s subsequent investigation, except for the first evacuated more than 100,000 people, even the people in the most remote places in Bucle have not lived for more than 5 years. That's why you don't know about this area, because the World Security Council has already blocked all news about Bucle. Watching Tony confirm the guess in their hearts. At this moment, even Wanda, who was always worried about Natasha Romanoff, looked a bit ugly at. There are more than 300,000 people, and none of them lived more than 5 years. God. This is just horrific. No wonder those guys from the World Security Council erased all news about Buckley from the map and the internet. After all, once this matter gets out, I'm afraid it will cause a lot of trouble. Then now, that place, it should be fine. Looking at the crowd, Tony Stark said seriously, 34 years have passed, and the source of pollution has long since disappeared. Although the source of light-guided weapon leaks is more than 10 times more harmful than the Mushroom Power Station, the time it takes to simply disappear is much shorter than that of the Mushroom Power Station. 34 years, enough light-guided weapons leak source disappeared. No wonder I didn't know, 34 years ago, before Natasha Romanoff was born, before I entered the circus. Listening to what Tony said, this matter has been sealed by the World Security Council for 34 years. Barton on the side said something. Okay everyone. Looking at the crowd, Suche said, since Tony knows where Bucre's address is, everyone get ready and leave on time in 20 minutes. I am coming too. Hearing what her boyfriend said, Da immediately said that he would also participate in this battle. Facing Wanda's proactive request, Suche nodded without hesitation. Wanda is now proficient at controlling the crimson magic power. So there is no problem in wanting to participate. Well, without Pietro. In fact, Pietro was killed by the bullet to save Barton. And Barton was preparing to use his body to resist the bullet in order to save a child. But now, the Buckeye that Tony is talking about doesn't have any civilians. But inexplicably, Suche had a premonition that this battle might be more threatening than the original Ultrons. After all, the Mind Gem is still in Ultron's hands. Mind Gem Ultron, that is the existence that Thanos just cut in half from scratch. But the only thing that is certain is that his physical strength and defense far exceed Thanos. So don't worry at all, it will be solved by Mind Gem Ultron. While getting ready, take over from Tony the Infinity Gauntlet he made for himself. Under Tony's curious eyes, Suche took out the Power Gem and placed it on the Infinity Gauntlet. Yes, this Infinity Gauntlet that can withstand gems was specially prepared by Suche for Tony to deal with Mind Gem Ultron. Ultron has 1 and he has 6. It's just that Suche is not sure what will happen once 2 identical infinite gems appear on the Earth at the same time. Will it cause mutual exclusion between the same infinite gems? Even when 2 identical infinite gems appear at the same time, will it cause some, such as infinite gems explosion or multi-universe colliding with each other? Therefore, Suche can only choose infinite gems that do not exist on the Earth to put on the glove. Well, Earth now has Mind Gem, Time Gem, TIE Particles, Reality Gem. The Space Gem was taken away by Loki. According to the timeline, the Power Gem should have been obtained by Thanos and handed over to Ronan, who is hunting Star-Lord and the others. Soul Gem in Vomir Star. Wisdom Gem. Well, there is no Wisdom Gem in this universe. Anthony the Wisdom Gem, inside the head of Tony Stark on the verge of world destruction. So the best way to do that is Power Gem and Soul Gem. But Suche thought for a while, and for the time being, just use the Power Gem. As for the source of the 6 infinite gems owned by Suche, well, thanks to Loki, the big brother of the multiverse, for the gift. Congratulations to this big brother Loki from the multi-parallel universe and his female version Loki Hill, to give birth to a little Loki. Take the Infinity Gauntlet and mount the Force Gem on the Infinity Gauntlet. In the next second, the purple power of the Power Gem rushed into Suche's body along the nano glove. But it didn't bring Suche even the slightest harm. It really is. Look at Suche, who is able to control the purple infinite gems proficiently just after getting started. Tony Stark opened his mouth, then shook his head again. By the way, does Ultron know that you have so many infinite gems? If I read correctly, the box you took out with magic. It seems that there are 5 infinite gems in different colors. Facing Tony's words, Suche shrugged his shoulders and did not answer. Just a pat on Tony. Come on, time is almost up. Let's go and bring Natasha Romanoff back and take out Ultron at the same time. No problem, but I like the order you said. Raising his eyebrows, Tony Stark smiled and said, compared to destroying Ultron, bringing our family back, this is the first priority. However, I'm curious about what Ultron's expression will be when he sees that you alone have 6 infinite gems. Oh, I forgot, Ultron is a robot, it should not have evolved to the stage where it can use emotes. Ha, come on, you fly a Quinjet. Smiling and pushing Tony, Su-Che grabbed Tony's shoulders and walked towards the Quinjet fighter. The city of Buckley was once part of a small city in the Middle East. The disaster 34 years ago turned this city into a real ghost. The streets that were supposed to be flat are now full of cracks. Green plants are winding and growing crazily along this abandoned city building. Abandoned old cars, traces of the explosion, mottled and dilapidated walls, and dusty ground. Everything shows that this is a city without people. No matter how prosperous it used to be, what is left now is nothing but desolation. Yes, Buckley, there is nothing here but plants and abandoned buildings. Not even half of the animals that were supposed to gradually take over the city were seen. In the depths of the city, one robot after another is doing things in an orderly manner according to the instructions. On the hills in the distance, Thor is lying there uninterested at the moment. The life detector on the wrist did not fluctuate. This shows that Natasha Romanoff was not in any danger too. But I lay here for a whole night. Wouldn't it be nice to find a cave to lie down comfortably if I knew it earlier? I have to listen to Steve talk about how 70 years ago, how he waited on the ground all night, and then rescued the Howling Commando. Tisk, it made my blood boil, and I also lay here all night. Although it is summer now, and I am not afraid of severe cold and heat. But it's really uncomfortable. The only good news is that it may be because of this strange city not far away. Even the hill where I am, does not have any mosquitoes or the like. Otherwise, let alone whether the mosquitoes can break through their own defenses. The dignified heir to the throne of the First Order of Asgard, the invincible Thor, lay on a barren hill to feed mosquitoes. It would be embarrassing to say it. It's like the Help game that I like very much, but Loki always says he doesn't like it. But then again, does Luke really not like it? Or, is the reason I really like it just because I want to see Loki lose face? Well, this is a question worth thinking about. Damn it. Wani's family isn't coming. I waited here all night, even thinking about the past with Loki. If they didn't rush over, I would be bored to death. The sunlight shines down from the sky, spilling on the ground through the mottled and dilapidated walls. Walking in the shadow of the city, everyone's expressions were solemn. How do I feel? It's gloomy here. War Machine Rhodes walked beside the crowd, looking at the city surrounded by lush green vines, but without any biological traces. Rhodes rubbed his arms and complained to everyone. Hello. Hearing the ear-piercing sound of the battle armor rubbing, Yi Sam turned his head and looked at him. Dude, can you pay attention to 10 o'clock? You are still wearing a battle coat, you can't touch the battle armor like you are touching your skin. In addition, listening to the sound of the armor rubbing, maybe you should put a layer of lubricant on the armor. Tony on the side also frowned at Rhodes. When did the battle armor I created actually make the sound of breaking iron? Facing Sam's complaints, Rhodes spread his hands. This is not the voice of the battle armor, but the angry voice of the more than 300,000 innocent souls. Maxcom buddy. Enough Rhodes, this joke is not funny. Everyone still knows about Rhodes' complaints about ability, even though this guy has not been in the Avengers Alliance reserve team for a long time. But everyone can see the skill of his complaints. But this time, Rhodes' complaints were arousing public outrage. Some jokes are better left alone, especially such disaster jokes. Don't laugh at natural disasters, don't laugh at man-made disasters. Facing everyone's attitude, Rhodes nodded. But I feel very depressed in my heart. The sentence just now seemed like he was complaining, but in fact, Rhodes couldn't imagine it. How desperate were the more than 300,000 people who could only wait for death when this Buckley was evacuated but was polluted by light-guided weapons. Faced with everyone's serious attitude, Thor on the side blinked his eyes, but he didn't ask about the 300,000 innocent souls. I feel like I didn't go back last night, as if I missed a lot of things. Shuttle between the abandoned cities, everyone has a trace of vigilance in their hearts. The other side. Hulk, when I'm not in danger, don't come out for now. Please, don't lose the chain at this time. After you save Natasha Romanoff, you can hit Ultron as you like, I promise. Seeing that there were only 2 robot guards in front of him, and inside the iron fence, Natasha Romanoff was sitting there. Dr. Banner hid in the corner, although he didn't know where the robots went, leaving only 2 guards, Natasha Romanoff. But Dr. Banner felt that this was a very good chance of saving. The premise is that Hulk doesn't come out to make trouble, so don't cause too much noise. Well, Sue said, Hulk is like a child, so he should be able to communicate. I wish Sue didn't have herself. Perhaps as if sensing something, Natasha Romanoff subconsciously raised her head and looked towards the corner where Dr. Banner was hiding. Then he suddenly picked up a stone on the ground and threw it at the two robots guarding him. After attracting the attention of two mindless robots, Natasha Romanoff deliberately loudly said, "Didn't Ultron tell you that humans need food?" While talking, Natasha Romanoff made a gesture to the companion hiding in the dark corner. Then he rushed to the fence and grabbed a robot's head directly. At the same time, Dr. Banner rushed over from the dark, picked up the wrench on the table, and slammed it on the head of another robot. "Well, you can't try to strangle a robot like Steve did." Found it. While passing through a street full of vines, Tony Stark looked at the situation displayed on the armor. Immediately said to Su-Che, "Dude, Dr. Banner has found the place where Natasha Romanoff is being held, and is already saving her." However, according to the news sent back by Dr. Banner, there seems to be some kind of kinetic energy machine in the place not far from where Natasha Romanoff was imprisoned. And this machine is connected to... Oh shit, here's a trap. As soon as Tony's voice fell, the next second, dozens of heat sources suddenly appeared on the display screen inside the armor, rushing towards this direction. "Be careful, there are missiles." Hearing Tony's shout, everyone immediately became alert. In the next second, there was only a sharp whistling sound, and then dozens of missiles were seen attacking everyone from all directions. Damn it. Seeing such a large number of missiles attacking his side, there was no place to hide except on the ground. For a moment, Tony Stark cursed secretly, and then immediately surrounded the crowd with Su-Che, Steve and Thor. Watching dozens of missiles piercing the sky and attacking towards him. Obviously, this is a trap laid by Ultron, who wants to use missiles to wipe out the members of the Avengers Alliance. Even if it is impossible to destroy the group, at least the weakened combat power of the Avengers Alliance members. After all, complete Avengers and Avengers with heavy losses are not the same at all. Facing the attack of dozens of missiles howling, Su-Che immediately made everyone behind him form a circle, and then quickly raised his hands. The invisible psychokinesis barrier was instantly formed, enveloping everyone in it. "Wanda, help me strengthen 10 times. Hearing her boyfriend's words, Wanda also opened her hands, and the crimson magic could be seen floating from her fingertips to the psychokinesis barrier. The energy of crimson magic and the psychokinesis barrier integrate with each other, and the psychokinesis barrier is directly promoted to a red energy defense barrier. The barrier had just been formed, and almost instantly, dozens of missiles attacked directly. Boom. Boom. The moment the missile exploded, the flames shot up into the sky, and the powerful power directly caused the place where everyone in the Avengers Alliance was to fall. The entire area of A Boucle was shaken. Dilapidated buildings rumbled down during the impact explosion, cracks formed on the ground and then began to collapse rapidly. All of a sudden, flames soared into the sky, smoke and dust rose everywhere, and the momentum of the buildings collapsing continuously was unstoppable, almost burying the world. My God. Dr. Banner, who had just rescued Natasha Romanoff, heard the violent explosion sound like a catastrophic explosion. Subconsciously, Natasha Romanoff, who had just escaped, looked into the distance. I saw that there was a lot of dust over there, and I could vaguely hear the sound of the building collapsing, as if it was shrouded by a magnitude earthquake. Seeing this scene, even Dr. Banner couldn't help but exclaim. Because the originally flat city has now become a layer of basin. And in the middle, although the specific situation is not clear, it is obvious that it has experienced a superscale blow. Seeing this scene, Dr. Banner and Natasha Romanoff looked at each other, and quickly ran over there. Running again and again, Natasha Romanoff kept pressing the headset to call Su-Che, Wanda and the others. I don't know how long it took, when the place filled with gunpowder smoke was blown away by the wind. The location where the Avengers Alliance was just now has already turned into ruins. Looking around, there are ruins as far as the eyes can see. Where it sinks is where the Avengers Alliance once stood. At this moment, the entire Avengers Alliance is buried deep underground. Pooh. Ba ba ba. The smoke cleared, as the Avengers rushed out of the rubble pile formed by the collapse of the thick building. Thor shook his head, spitting continuously. With such defensive barrier in place, you don't seem to be covered with dust. Watching Thor spitting and fiddling with his hair, it seemed as though the dust had all been poured into his mouth alone. Steve asked, frowning while holding the shield. Definitely not, but I hate this feeling of disgrace. Even if it actually stains me, I always feel as if it has messed with my mouth and body. As he said that, Thor turned the hammer in his hand and looked at the crowd. This is a problem I got from swinging a sledgehammer on a construction site in that small town in New Mexico. At that time, I was swinging a hammer in the construction site every day, making my whole body dusty. Fortunately, my girlfriend would come back with toiletries every day. Oh. I'm talking about Doris, you should know. I told you. Since then, I've hated getting dirty anyway. Listening to Thor's words, everyone nodded. Well, dignified Asgard Thor, it's normal to have a bit of a clean freak or something. While everyone was talking, Natasha Romanoff and Dr. Banner rushed over from a distance. After seeing the smoke cleared, the members of the Summer League did not have any problems. The two breathed a sigh of relief. But soon, before Natasha Romanoff and Dr. Banner could speak, everyone felt a wave of shaking. Just before everyone reacted, there were continuous crackling sounds from the entire Bukley underground. In the next second, the whole city began to slowly rise into the air. Damn it, does this Zakwang guy want to raise the whole city to the sky? Seeing the broken land slowly rise behind him, Falcon Sam frowned and asked, what effect does this have? Do you want to throw us all to death? But after Falcon's voice fell, Tony on the side spoke with a heavy tone. According to the land area of the city of Bukley, once the whole city starts to lift off, no, even half of the city starts to lift off. As long as it reaches a certain height, the force star falling from the sky is enough to generate the energy to restart the Earth. As Tony's voice fell, hundreds of steel robot legions gradually began to appear from all directions. Everyone, get ready for battle, Ultron is coming. Take out the Deathblade from the system space, which is the spoils that were seized after Supergiant, one of Thanos' subordinates, was killed by Su-Che. Although I don't know what material it is made of, but its sharpness and firmness are indeed top-notch. Su-Che even suspects that the strength of this Deathblade is not inferior to Steve's shield and Thor's Mjolnir at all. After a group of robots besieged from all directions, they did not attack immediately. Instead, Ultron, with the mind gem inlaid on its head, slowly fell from the sky to the rising ground. You guys from the Avengers are really a bunch of bugs that can't be killed. Unexpectedly, the dozens of missiles I tried my best to snatch did not cause any crisis to you. Oh, by the way, as much as I hate this guy Stark, he was right when he just said that as long as Bukley rises to a certain height, then falls. Then, the Earth will begin to restart. Having said that, Ultron looked at Natasha Romanoff, and then stretched out his hand and asked, if you choose to stand by me, then the promise I made will always be valid, I can assure you. Although vibranium is relatively scarce, as far as I know, you can build a pair of. Stop talking nonsense. Before Ultron could finish speaking, Steve took a step forward holding the shield. Do you want to drive us apart in person? Ultron, your choice is very stupid. Facing Steve's words, Ultron froze for a moment, then raised his tone. I hate people interrupting me, damn it, is this the courage your shield gave you? After the voice fell, the beam of mind gem on Ultron's head instantly attacked Steve. Facing Ultron's sudden attack, Shi Tian immediately raised the shield to resist. At the same time, other members of the Avengers immediately acted. Blossoms of black ice rose from Su-Che's palm, and he flung them towards the steel robots. At the same time, his whole body instantly turned into an afterimage, rushing to the robots with the Deathblade in his hand, slashing left and right, as if there was no one in the land. Wanda's crimson magic is like a dimensionality reduction blow, tearing the robot rushing towards him to pieces. Thor raised Mjolnir and summoned lightning to strike at the robots. Tony's palm energy cannon, Hawkeye's arrows, Natasha Romanoff's widow's bite and pistol, Dr. Banner's shorts, air, cross this out. Anyway, for a moment, all members of the Avengers launched an attack and fought with those robots. One good matchup after another in this rising land of Bukley just keeps coming. The strength of Mind Gem Ultron is very strong, even if Captain America uses the shield to resist the beam emitted. But within a few seconds, a clicking sound came from the shield. Hearing the sound of the shield cracking, Steve's eyes instantly showed disbelief. Before Mind Gem Ultron could destroy the shield, Su-Che, who was always watching the battlefield, rushed to Ultron in the next second and sent him flying with a punch. Ultron, who was knocked out, stood in the air and looked at Su-Che, who was also standing in the air. One punch is really a simple human attack method. After the words fell, the soul gem beam on his forehead directly attacked Su-Che. At some point, the Deathblade in Su-Che's hand had been put away, and the nano glove inlaid with power gems appeared in Su-Che's hand. Seeing Ultron's mind beam, Su-Che also directly raised his 1000 to release a purple beam of power. The two beams did not collide as imagined, but hit the bodies of Su-Che and Ultron respectively. This was intentional by Su-Che, he was sure that his physical strength and defense could withstand the attack of the mind beam. But Ultron's vibranium body couldn't resist the power of the King's Gem. Sure enough, just as Su-Che imagined, the mind beam attacked Su-Che, only making Su-Che take 2 steps back in the air. But when the light beam of the power gem hit Ultron, the solid body made of vibranium began to be damaged in an instant. No. Damn it. Feeling the irreversible damage to his body, Ultron's eyes instantly turned red. He turned sideways to avoid the beam of the power gem, and rushed directly to Su-Che. Casually smashing the robot in front of him, Tony Stark flew down to the bottom of the rising city of Bucre without any hesitation, and then drilled in along the vein of the blue machine. Entering the middle section of the soaring city, what appeared in front of Tony's eyes was an oscillating instrument that supported the city's upward flight. Guys, I found a way to stop Bucre from flying. Controlling the battle armor, he came to the orbiter, and Tony Stark checked the orbiter and said, "Just stop the orbiter, then we can go up and down half of the city that is going up. But now the altitude has exceeded 1,300 meters, even if it falls, it will cause great harm. So the best way is to destroy the orbiter when it reaches an altitude of 3,000 meters, and then we will find a way to completely destroy the city in the air while it is landing." Speaking of this, Tony Stark thought for a while. What about Sue? According to his ability, he should be able to easily destroy half of the city, and I need his cooperation. On the rising ground. Although at this moment I feel very sorry for my shield with cracks. But Steve knew what was most important. So without any consideration, he jumped behind a robot with a shield, and strangled the robot's neck with the edge of the shield. There was only a click, and the robot's head was directly pulled off by the power of shield and Steve. Stepping on the robot's head, Steve listened to Tony's words in the headset. He replied directly. Just now Sue fought with Ultron inlaid with the mind gem, and then I saw Sue flying away while choking Ultron's neck. It should be easy to solve it on our side after taking Ultron away. As he spoke, Steve glanced at the head of the robot under his feet, and then kicked it flying. Who says you can't strangle a robot? I heard Steve say that Su-Che grabbed Ultron's neck and flew away. There was a strange look in Tony's eyes. Garrot is useless against robots like Ultron. But since Su-Che took Ultron away alone, it meant that Sue couldn't spare the time to destroy the city. Leave it to me. Using the crimson magic to tear up the robot in front of him, Wanda said to Tony in the headset. Although my boyfriend doesn't have time to take care of this right now, it's just destroying half of the city, I think I should be able to do it. Hearing Wanda say that she can destroy half of the city, Tony Stark nodded. In this case, Wanda, you are ready. After hearing my order, destroy it with all your strength. No problem. I moved my fingertips a bit, feeling the riot of engineering energy in my body. The corner of Wanda's mouth turned up, since he has the help of his boyfriend, and often fights with himself in the Avengers Alliance base. So now I have a very strong control over the energy of crimson magic. Destroy half of the city, just let it disintegrate and split in the air. It's not like a boyfriend who just blows this place into pieces. This is not difficult. Half of the city of Buckley was still flying rapidly, but after hearing Tony say that he was going to blow up here, other members of the Avengers Alliance began to choose a retreat route. War Machine Rhodes, Falcon Sam, Thor, these can all fly down with people. As for the Hulk, well, it doesn't matter. If it would have been dropped to death, it wouldn't have given S.H.I.E.L.D. such a headache back then. After easily disposing of these robots, everyone began to retreat immediately. When it was almost time for everyone to retreat, Tony directly used the energy of the armor to forcefully stop the running device, and immediately sent a signal to Sheeta to destroy it. Receiving Tony's signal to destroy, Wanda took a deep breath. Immediately, controlling the rioting crimson magic energy, a pair of slender hands wrapped the crimson magic, and instantly pressed it to the ground under his feet. The violent crimson magic energy began to spread rapidly along the ground in an instant. As the crimson magic energy spread like long red snakes, there were continuous clicking sounds on the ground where it passed. When the energy reaches a certain level, the ground full of cracks under his feet collapsed in an instant, and half of the city, which was originally a flat piece, instantly turned into countless fragments and fell down. Controlled the crimson magic to fly down slowly. No matter when, you must leave a trace of energy to ensure that you can retreat smoothly. This is something her boyfriend taught her, which Sheeta naturally never forgot. He just slowly descended from the air, and he didn't care about the broken rocks and cracked soil below him. Instead, he turned his head and searched for Su-Che's trace. My boyfriend has said more than once how powerful Mind Gem Ultron is. Therefore, although I have very strong confidence in my boyfriend, but thinking of Su-Che grabbing Ultron's neck and taking it away from here, I don't know where it went. Wanda still had a trace of worry in her heart. Hundreds of kilometers away, in a forest, a very unreasonable thing. An electric current Ultron with a broken body and electric currents whose internal circuits are still buzzing with sparks. He looked at Su-Che, who took the mind gem off his forehead. Because of the line, Ultron's tone keeps rising and falling, giving people a very weird feeling. I know some things on the internet, but I haven't found any information about the purple infinite gems in your hand. Even, your physical strength is very wrong, it doesn't belong to the category of human beings at all. This, I can't understand. Facing Ultron's weird tone, the nano gloves inlaid with power gems began to flash with purple light. So, this is your last words? Last words? No, no, no. A unknown currency. As a super ability user, I think you should know that everything is futile. The Earth is doomed, it's just a matter of time. The fate of mankind has long been doomed, but it is a pity that I cannot prevent the destruction of the Earth. Having said that, Ultron raised his broken steel head and looked at the sky. Eternal stars are really beautiful, even if there is an explosion, they will shine brilliantly. I'm just. Forget it, let's do it. Hearing Ultron's tone gradually become weaker, Su-Che used the power gem to completely destroy it without any hesitation. In fact, Su-Che also knew that the Earth would be destroyed sooner or later. But, definitely not now. Ultron's matter has been completely resolved, not too intense, nor too anticlimactic. Although, half of the city of Bucre is held up by a machine made by Ultron, trying to destroy the creatures on the Earth. But in the end, Ultron still failed, and the Earth still existed intact. However, the only fortunate thing is that this incident did not cause any casualties. Clint is still alive, and Pietro was also called back from my private island by Wanda, and continued to study the Lost Stripes with lawyer Matthew. Not to mention that because the Avengers Alliance failed to save the next family in Sokovia as it did originally, the male head of that family hated the Avengers Alliance extremely. Eventually, the guy finds the video of Bucky killing Tony's parents, and the whole Avengers Alliance falls apart. This is the most comforting part, although Tony already knew that his parents were killed by Winter Soldier Bucky Barnes, even earlier than Steve. It seems that this matter has been resolved satisfactorily, but I don't know whether those people in the World Security Council of this universe will use the Ultron incident as an example to get us to sign an agreement so as to control the entire Avengers Alliance. However, this time Nick Fury did not leave S.H.I.E.L.D. on the surface, so there should be no big problem with him standing in front. In this regard, I still trust him very much, inside S.H.I.E.L.D. Looking at the latest diary in the Black Gold Diary. A rare smile appeared on Nick Fury's face. It's not easy. I can see Su-Che's own trust in Su-Che's diary. This is simply not easy. After all, although Su-Che didn't say it, Nick Fury could feel it. Su-Che was actually full of distrust towards himself at first. Although Su-Che often supports what he does, it is very difficult to truly gain his trust. Although, I have trusted him a long time ago. If it is said that his trust in Su-Che has reached 73%, then Nick Fury thinks. Su-Che only had 50% trust in himself at most. You know, for a king of agents, a person who has always doubted everything. 73% is already a fairly high trust value, okay? But now, at least looking at this sentence in the latest diary, Nick Fury actually felt a little relieved. It was as if the seeds that had been planted for so many years finally came to fruition. It's not easy. Although it is not certain, Su-Che has 100% trust in himself, and it even feels more like wanting to push himself out as a tool person who can take the thunder. But at least, it's off to a good start. But after thinking about it, Nick Fury suddenly felt that there was something cheap in his heart. Although the Avengers Alliance was established by itself, the members of the Avengers Alliance are more willing to listen to Su-Che's instructions. Rather than their own orders, S.H.I.E.L.D. was just an ally at the time. In the end, just because I saw Su-Che saying that I was going to push myself to the top, I was so honored? If Mare Fake didn't know, Su-Che wouldn't know the existence of the Black Gold Diary in his hand. So Nick Fury thinks, this is Su-Che himself in Pia. Thinking of this, Nick Fury continued to watch. No way, even if Su-Che is in Pua, besides accepting it, what else can he do? Who told Su-Che to be the recognized soul in the Avengers Alliance? Although the matter of Ultron did not cause too much harm, the matter still did not end so easily. Definitely, this is not for us, but for Tony. It has been more than 3 days since the end of Ultron. During these 3 days, Tony has been cooperating with the artificial intelligence Jarvis to clear the traces left by Ultron on the network. In order to prevent Ultron from resurging, or slowly growing in unknown dark corners of the internet. I asked Tony if he needed help, but Tony said no. After all, he and Jarvis are professionals in this regard. It can be said that this incident is a happy event for everyone, even the connection is relieved. But not without lost people, like Steve. Yes, Mind Gem Ultron is very powerful, and its mind beam directly hit Steve's shield. As a result, there are several cracks in the shield, which can give Steve Even at the celebration party held that night, Steve's smile was not so hearty. Obviously, he is feeling sorry for his shield. Seeing this, Nick Fury frowned slightly. On the night when Ultron was eliminated, the Avengers Alliance held a celebration party in Tony's villa. Celebrate them saving the world yet again. Although Hill is from S.H.I.E.L.D., he was invited to participate. Although he invited himself, he didn't go. When Hill came back, he said something was wrong with Steve. After that night, Steve took the shield to S.H.I.E.L.D. the next morning to see if S.H.I.E.L.D. could help him rest the cracked shield. But after research by S.H.I.E.L.D. researchers, the shield can be repaired, but the result after the repair is definitely not as strong as the original one. It's not that S.H.I.E.L.D.'s workmanship is bad, but that it lacks key materials. You must know that vibranium is not something that can be bought with money. That Ulysses Crow-guy S.H.I.E.L.D. sent someone to get in touch with and bought some vibranium from him too. But the quantity is very small, and it has been used to make various materials, and now S.H.I.E.L.D. does not have vibranium in hand. So naturally Steve was a little disappointed by the result. Thinking of this, Nick Fury sighed involuntarily. S.H.I.E.L.D. is not without other high-tech equipment. There are even many powerful things that ordinary people don't know. But Captain Rogers didn't like those things at all. And in his words, if Captain Magnesia loses his iconic shield, is he still Captain America? Tisk. It's just so stubborn. Sure enough, one of the Avengers members counts as one, and none of them are so worry-free. From this point of view, the S.H.I.E.L.D. research department is not allowed to continue to study the sharpness of arrows in the Barton attached to various technologies. It's the only one that makes me feel at ease. Thinking of this, Nick Fury shook his head, and then continued to read. Before I killed Ultron, it told me that the Earth would be destroyed sooner or later, which I did not refute. Because I know that, in fact, all of this is preordained. After I came to this world, I once did an experiment to try to see if I could catch a fish. In fact, just as the bait was put down, a fish named Eternal Race took the initiative to bite the bait. The moment I saw them, I knew that the Earth in this universe would not be spared either. Like, the scene that belongs to Asgard, Ragnarok. Helheim. Looking at the black gold diary, the word Ragnarok was mentioned again. Hela's expression immediately became serious. Hela hated Odin, there's no denying that. But again, the love for Asgard, this is also unquestionable. So when I saw Su Che mention the term Ragnarok again in the black gold diary, Hela frowned deeply, then said with a sneer, "Is this the air you bred after you sealed me? Hey, one has been sealed for nearly 2,000 years, and the other is so weak that even the so-called Ragnarok cannot stop it. Odin, you still seem to have a poor eye for choosing an heir. It seems that Hela, the goddess of death, has to break the seal and save my own Asgard myself." Although he put himself in it, Hela didn't care. On the contrary, in her heart, this further proves how inferior Odin's vision is. As for the twilight of the gods, although Hela is very concerned about it, she thinks that as long as she breaks the seal, she returns to Asgard. Then everything will be gone. For this, Hela has extremely strong confidence. Until seeing the next words, the evil spirit on Hela burst out in an instant. The twilight of the gods can't be stopped at all. In fact, Odin's death hastened the twilight of the gods. The moment Odin passed away, Hela broke the seal and returned from Helheim. Hela has a special feature, that is, the longer she stays in Asgard, the stronger her strength will become. Thor and Loki are naturally not Hela's opponents. But they have to resist. According to Hela's character, once Asgard falls into her hands, the 9 realms will rekindle the flames of war. For this result, Thor is unacceptable. Because of this, Asgard was completely destroyed, even the foundation was blown to pieces. It can be said that the real twilight in Asgard was actually caused by Hela breaking the seal. Actually, no one can tell right from wrong, just like nearly 2,000 years ago, if Odin hadn't exiled and sealed Hela, then none of this would have happened. It's just that if Odin hadn't exiled Hela, then perhaps the 9 realms would have changed into something else. So, who can tell right from wrong? Asgard. Look at the latest updated diary. Queen Frigg's expression was also a little dignified. As a queen, she naturally knew about the prophecy of Ragnarok about Asgard. Only now is it completely clear what is the source of the twilight of the gods. But what if we know the source now? The death of her husband Odin is a foregone conclusion. Once he dissipates, then Hela must break the seal and return to Asgard. Frigga still knows about Hela's ability. Otherwise, the entire Valkyrie family would not have fallen, and the Austrian regiment would have sealed her to Helheim. Even though almost 2,000 years have passed. But now, Frigga is still not optimistic about her eldest son Thor, who is Hela's opponent. Perhaps just like what the owner of this black gold diary said, who can tell the right and wrong of what happened back then? Now that the seed is planted, except whatever will grow out of the sprout. Thinking of this, Queen Frigga sighed softly, and continued to read the Black Gold Diary. Asgard is now in a dilemma. How similar is returning to Earth to Asgard? The twilight of the gods will destroy Asgard, and similarly, the appearance of God will also turn the Earth into dust in the universe in an instant. At present, the only way to prevent the sleeping God from waking up is to wipe out half of the Earth's population. But even if I know this method, what's the use? I can only stand helplessly and watch everything happen. The only thing that can be done now is to let Thanos snap that damned finger, delay the occurrence of the God appearance incident, and then find other solutions. Eternals may be trusted, but they cannot be allies of the Avengers alliance. In addition, Thanos, although he is a member of the Titan family, but on the Titan star, they also call themselves the Eternal Family. The update of the Black Gold Diary came to an abrupt end here. It took a long time for Queen Frigg to close the Black Gold Diary slowly. It seems that the situation of Earth and Asgard is the same. I didn't expect to face such a dilemma, but we have to face it. Put the Black Gold Diary into your own drawer. Queen Frigg got up and walked to the treatment room in the hall. Just now, according to his maid, Thor brought back the girl named Jane Foster from the Earth. The reason is still unknown, but Thor took her to the treatment room for the first time to use the soul-smelting furnace. Now that Thor has returned with his Earth girlfriend, he, as a mother, naturally has to show his face. After all, my husband's temper is really. As for the matter of the twilight of the gods, there is no rush at all for a while. Queen Frigg was not in a hurry, but S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Nick Fury wrinkled into a bitter face. Record the events of the gods, the eternal race, in their own secret archives. After hesitation for a long time, a line of text was added after the incident of Thanos snapping his fingers that had been recorded. When necessary, secretly help it create favorable conditions for snapping fingers that symbolize the fate of the universe. After recording this information, Nick Fury leaned back in his chair and frowned. This line of text is written out of trust in Suche. Only. There are more and more things that bother me now. I thought there was the Avengers alliance, and there was Sue, a super strong man from the parallel universe. You can relax yourself and have more cards against the enemy. But who would have thought that in the future, apart from Suche's destruction of the universe and the Earth, there would be another major event about the destruction of the Earth. And the harsh conditions of this big event, I can't bear it at all. There is no way to stop this from happening, unless I can really make up my mind to wipe out half of the Earth's population. It's just that Meta billion is close to 4 billion people. This is a living, heavy life, not a string of simple numbers. Thinking of this, Nick Fury felt even more headache. Now, what else can I say other than Mare fuck? Who are you? And who are you? 2. If there is nothing else, can I go back to jail? Believe me, I definitely didn't take the initiative to break out of prison, someone forced me to do it. Inside the restaurant. Looking at a bald black man with a blindfold in front of him, a woman with a serious face who seemed to be drawing a gun in the next second. Scott Lang felt that this period of time was too magical. First, he was fired when he was looking for a job, and then he tried his best to open an oversized safe, which turned out to be a set of clothes. The most exaggerated thing is that after putting on that suit, I became the same file size as an ant. God. What the hell is that dress? Although things became clear later, it was Dr. Pym who created the Ant-Man battlesuit. And used this battlesuit to defeat that bald head. As a result, after a white man with a bald head was defeated, another black man with a bald head came. Have you poked the bald den in your life? Or is it that in the previous life, in front of God, he used a pusher to push all the guys who went to heaven to be bald? The most important thing is that he was forced by Dr. Pym to escape from the prison cell of the police station with a wanted warrant on his back. If you don't go back and solve it quickly, I'm afraid I will really become a fugitive. Thinking of this, Scott Lang immediately said, You too, in my memory, I shouldn't have offended you too. So if there is nothing wrong, then I will withdraw first? Believe me, if you two stay with me for a long time, those state police may think you are my accomplices. It won't be good if you get tired by then. In the face of Scott Lang, on the surface, he was thinking of them, but in fact he was secretly threatening words. Nick Fury stirred the coffee on the table with a spoon. Don't worry, all your records and files on the state police side have been erased by me. In other words, you are free now. Saying that, Nick Fury turned his head to look at Hill. The coffee in this restaurant is far from Sue's Tahualan Cafe. Hey, wait. Hearing Nick Fury's words, Scott Lang immediately interrupted curiously. Excuse me, you just said that you helped me erase all the records from the police? Also, you just mentioned sus Peach Blossom Forest Cafe. God, The Peach Blossom Forest Cafe you mentioned should be the Peach Blossom Forest Cafe in Manhattan, New York, right? It's the one opened by the famous Silver Moon Knight Suche? Eh. Oh god. You guys know the Silver Moon Knights, you know the Avengers? Oh no. I mean, you're agents of the Avengers. I mean. Hey Scott, don't disturb other people's meals. Looking at Scott Lang with a slightly excited expression, Nick Fury stopped stirring the coffee. Let me introduce myself. I am Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D., and this is my assistant, Maria Hill. S.H.I.E.L.D. has paid close attention to the matter that you used the battlesuit to become an ant-like file size, and deleted all your past illegal files. Thanks. Hearing what Nick Fury said, Scott Lang immediately said, "Thank you for everything you have done for me, I really appreciate it. But are you guys trying to recruit me to join S.H.I.E.L.D.? If that's the case, I'd appreciate your help in clearing my files. But I'm sorry, I'm afraid I can't join you. Because I think Dr. Pym is right, although I don't know why he has such a big prejudice against you." Yes, it is very impolite to interrupt someone. But Steck Lang deliberately interrupted Nick Fury to continue talking. Dr. Pym has a very big opinion on S.H.I.E.L.D. According to Dr. Pym, his wife died because of carrying out S.H.I.E.L.D.'s plan. So long after he helped to defeat the bald head, Dr. Pym told himself not to have any contact with S.H.I.E.L.D. Well, if Suche is here, hear what Scott Lang said. Then it probably shouldn't be a surprise. Originally, Dr. Pym had such a big opinion on S.H.I.E.L.D. and people surnamed Stark. Or because Dr. Pym believed that Howard Stark stole his Pym particles and wanted to snatch his research results. But in fact, anyone who has watched Avengers Alliance 4 knows that Howard Stark was wrong. It seems that he was not wronged. After all, it was his son Tony Stark who went back to the past and stole the Pym particles researched by Dr. Pym. So, although it's not like grabbing the results as Dr. Pym thought. But in the end it was someone named Stark who stole the Pym particles. But because of the appearance of Suche, the past and the future have not alternated repeatedly, and Suche has also confirmed that this is not a world like the Mobius ring. Members of the Avengers Alliance have indeed not traveled to the past, and have not yet arrived. Therefore, although Dr. Pym still left S.H.I.E.L.D., it was only because of his wife's death for the mission of S.H.I.E.L.D. Well, the reason is still strong. But in fact Dr. Pym's wife is not dead, but trapped in the quantum realm. Even had a relationship with that Kong. That. Before Nick Fury could finish speaking, Stekron, who interrupted without hesitation and rejected Nick Fury's invitation. At this moment, looking at the two people, they asked cautiously but slightly hopefully, "Although I'm sorry for rejecting your offer, can you help me get an autograph of the Silver Moon Knight and Captain Rogers' autograph? My little peanut, is my daughter. She admires the Silver Moon Knight very much, and always says that she will marry him when she grows up. Although I also admire the Silver Moon Knight, as a father, I don't really want to hear my daughter say that, but I don't have a good way. Girls who are a few years old are full of lovely fantasies. It's like I owe you S.H.I.E.L.D. a favor. If you need me in any situation in the future, then I promise to return you a favor. Believe me, this is a serious promise from a father who loves his daughter very much after divorce." Looking at Scott Lang's serious look, Nick Fury snorted. "Why don't you ask for an autograph or even a group photo in person? This time we are not here to invite you to join S.H.I.E.L.D., but to invite you to join the Avengers Reserve Team. Now, there are 3 reserve team members of the Avengers Alliance. If you can pass the assessment and get the approval of the Avengers Alliance members, then I believe that you can hold your daughter in your arms and take a photo with Sue." Having said that, Nick Fury picked up the spoon. "By the way, Sue has a girlfriend, and the relationship is very good. If nothing else, I think he and Wanda may be the second person in the Avengers Alliance to get married. Although the first one has been married, and both have daughters. I don't care, I'm going back now, immediately. In the Time Administration." Looking at Mobius in front of him, Loki clenched his fists full of anger. Let the Loki of the parallel world deal with the impact caused by the Loki of the parallel world. It's not my responsibility. Hey Loki, calm down. Looking at the emotional Loki, Mobius immediately persuaded. Calm down. How do I calm down? Clenched his fists and smashed against the wall forcefully, Loki lost his composure in a rare emotion. Thor has brought Jane Foster back to Asgard. TIE particles, the reality gem that can make the Dark Elves appear, has been brought to Asgard by her. You let me calm down at this time. Having said that, Loki took a deep breath, and then worked hard to make himself less irritable. It's just the worry and anger in my heart, but I can't hide it anyway. Jane Foster was brought back to Asgard by Thor, which shows that the gears of fate are still happening in Asgard. Yes, Mobius, my fate has changed, but my mother died during this time. Listening to Loki suppressing his emotions, he couldn't control his trembling voice no matter what. Mobius said softly, Everyone's fate is doomed, and there are some things we can't change at all. I do not believe. Hearing what Mobius said, Loki sneered. If everyone's fate cannot be changed, what about Suche, who came from the multi-parallel universe? His appearance changed the fate of everyone in the Avengers alliance in the future: Thor, Natasha Romanoff, Wanda, Tony Stark, Steve Rogers. If everyone's destiny cannot be changed, then what do the countless branches on the timeline that symbolize their destiny represent? Don't forget, I asked you the first time you appeared, and it was you who admitted that the fate of these people has been changed because of Suche. It's just that the Time Management Bureau didn't dare to arrest Suche, who interfered with the normal development of the original timeline. As soon as Loki's voice fell, the scar-faced Tony Stark, who was sitting there gnawing a biscuit, said, I think what Loki said is right. Let a son know that his mother will be killed on that day, but he can't save her. This is undoubtedly very cruel. Besides, Mobius, you should know that we have already seen the truth of the time administration. After all, even Anthony told me it was all ridiculous. Hearing what Scarface Tony Stark said, he looked at Loki, who was pleading in his eyes. Mobius was silent for a moment, and finally sighed. I can't help you much, Luke, you know that. While talking, Mobius handed Loki the weapon used to judgment the time offender. At the same time, take out the transmission device and activate the time gate. Actually, I kind of want a motorboat, but because of work, the motorboat doesn't belong to me. Well, even if I don't want to admit it, I think, in fact, some of the things we investigated are correct. Only. Speaking of this, Mobius sighed, but did not continue talking. Go, Loki, go and change the fate of your Asgard. As for the time judge, leave it to me. Looking at the device and arbitrator of the time portal to himself. Loki nodded, took a deep breath, and stepped into the portal without any hesitation. Wait until Loki goes in and the portal disappears. Scarface Tony Stark said to Mobius. From now on, I really like you, Mobius, even though you don't let me enter the world of this universe, even if you look at me from a distance. You won't allow even one glance at Peepo. Listening to Tony's ridicule, Mobius spread his hands. You don't belong to this universe in the first place. If you suddenly appeared in this universe, it will definitely cause unnecessary time branches. Even though, I now 70% believe that what you and Loki said, the time administration, is fake. But seriously, I don't really want a jet ski. Looking at Mobius, Scarface Tony laughed. Then open the life projection of the time administration. Continue to watch the past that belonged to where I used to be, and now has destroyed the world. There is one thing to say, this world without mutant is really novel. But in the end, it's not your own world. But it didn't matter, at least in the destroyed world that belonged to him, the images of his Peepo and little Morgan still remained. Earth. Super strength, super speed, super life. Looking at the system prompt, Hela's trust value has exceeded 90% of the rewards issued. Suche was really surprised. After Hela's trust value reached 90%, she actually gave 3 abilities directly? Although the 3 abilities complement each other, it's not like water control, psychokinesis, and the body of Superman with heat vision are all not next to each other. However, it is indeed a very pleasant surprise that 3 super abilities burst out at once. Open the skill introduction panel of the system, and soon, the introduction of the 3 abilities appeared in front of Suche. Super strength. Because the host has a perfect defense version of the body of Superman, the stronger the physical fitness, the higher the strength. The host can easily exert 1,000 tons of force with one punch. And because of the physical fitness, there is no upper limit. Super speed. Flight running ability can easily exceed the speed of light. Super life. Any harsh environment cannot cause survival danger to the host, such as space, mantle, magma, extreme cold and other situations. Host. Suche. Age. 22 years old. Identity. Black Gold Diary owner, true. Parallel world superhero, false. Avengers member, true. Ability. Superman body perfect defense advanced version, super strength, super life, super speed, heat vision, 35,000 degrees, ultimate perfect water control power, psychokinesis, mind magic. The upper limit of strength. None. Current strength level, level single universe. Mission. None. Main quest. Sacrifice Galactus. Holders of the Black Gold Diary, Queen Frigg of Asgard, Goddess of Death Hela, Wanda Django Maximov, Natasha Romanoff, Nick Fury. Asterisk note. Due to the strength of the host, it has officially surpassed level Godfather and reached level single universe. Making a Black Gold Diary will open up new quotas. Quantity. 1. Asgard. Look, who's back. Holding Loki's cheeks with both hands, Queen Frigg had a kind smile on her face. During the time you disappeared, Mother has been asking Heimdall to look for you. Now seeing you come back intact, this is the happiest thing for mother. Looking at the kind and loving mother in front of him, Loki suddenly had a sore nose. Forcibly controlling the emotions in his heart, Loki quickly said, "Mother, this time is." "Hush." Putting her finger on Loki's mouth, Queen Frigga smiled gently and shook her head, signaling him not to continue talking. "Some things are meant to happen, and what you experience is your future, not your mother's. As a mother, I just hope that you can suffer less in the future, and that's enough. I'm happiest because your soul has changed. I believe that such a Loki will definitely become better in the future." Seeing his mother's eyes full of love, Loki opened his mouth several times, but didn't know what to say. "After finally sorting out my thoughts, I wanted to tell my mother what happened to me recently." As a result, at this time, Thor, who was holding a hammer, walked in very blindly. Looking at Thor who walked in, he happily called his name at the moment. Loki looked up at the sky speechlessly, then sighed. "What's the matter, Loki? Seeing your dear brother, don't you?" Before he finished speaking, Loki turned around suddenly, and punched Thor heavily in the face, causing the unsuspecting Thor to stagger. "Do you know what you're doing? Do you know what happens when you bring Jane Foster back to Asgard?" Looking at Thor in front of him, Loki stepped forward and grabbed Thor by the collar. "Damn it, you've been with Sue for so long. Why don't you have any brains at all?" Thor, who had been punched unsuspectingly, just wanted to get angry. But in the end, before he could get angry, Loki who beat him took the lead and grabbed his collar. While roaring, he questioned plausibly. This made Thor feel a little helpless. "No, I greeted you happily, and then you turned around and punched me for no reason." Now he grabbed my collar in front of me and questioned angrily. Is this what Sue once said, the villain sues first? But I don't know why." Looking at Loki, whose eyes were red and furious to the extreme, Thor felt a little guilty for no reason. Did he really do something wrong, or did he bring some disaster to Asgard? That's why Loki was so angry. "Not right. I just came back with Jane Foster, and wanted to use the soul-smelting furnace to see what was in Jane's body. This won't be another Loki plot." Looking suspiciously at the angry Loki in front of him. As brothers who grew up together, Thor was also surprised to find that this time Loki seemed to be really full of anger. Looking at the angry younger son, and the older son who was punched, although he didn't know what happened, he felt guilty for no reason. Queen Frigg smiled softly, then stepped forward and whispered to Loki, "Be patient with him." Listening to his mother's words, Loki let go of Thor's collar. It was just that he still felt a little puzzled, and when he let go, he gave him a push. Ignore the confused Thor. Loki turned to look at his mother. "Mother, do you know what will happen?" "Almost got it. Even knowing that it is very likely that he will die soon." But Frigga still didn't care about it. "Your mother was raised by a witch, so she can see your soul. Loki, I've suffered a lot during this time, but I think it's a good thing. It's like it's my destiny too. Since it is my destiny, then I should gladly accept it. Don't worry about what is destined to happen. I just hope, my children, your future will be better." Looked at Loki and wanted to say something else. Queen Frigg stepped forward with a smile, holding Loki with one hand and Thor with the other. He didn't let go of their hands until he brought them to the door. "Maybe you two brothers should have a good talk. As a mother, what I want to see more is that you two brothers can live in harmony." After speaking, Frigg smiled at Thor and Loki. Then she closed her bedroom special. Watching his mother close the door, Thor, who still didn't know what happened, turned his head and looked at Loki. "So where did you go when you disappeared? What exactly did you see that made you so angry that you beat your brother?" Speaking of this, Thor said with certainty, "I can feel the anger contained in this punch, even more angry than the knife that stabbed me when you turned into a snake and I picked you up. Maybe, like Mother said, maybe we should really talk, Loki. Sincerity is always the most open to people." This is what Thor learned from Doris. She told herself that she wanted to talk to others, she wanted to be trusted by others. Then the best way is to show the sincerity in your heart, not anger. Looking at Thor's eyes full of sincerity at this moment. Frowning, Loki thought about it, then nodded. "Go to my room, I don't want to see Jane Foster right now." "Haha, don't do that." Seeing that Loki agreed, Thor stepped forward with a smile and put his arms around Loki's shoulders. While walking towards Loki's palace, he said, "Anyway, Jane is also your brother and my girlfriend, you can't do that. Besides, it's Jane who should be angry now. Who told you to bring Chitauri to invade Earth? Don't be angry, Loki. I noticed that your temper seems to have changed a lot. Why do you get angry every now and then? This is not like you." Okay, can't I stop talking? Let's go to your place and have a good drink with the two of us." Thor's hearty laughter echoed all the way. Everyone can see that Thor is in a great mood at the moment. Well, I hope Thor's mood remains this good after the talk is over. At the same time, some people don't seem to be in such a happy mood. At least, when he saw a black gold diary that he had never seen before suddenly appeared in front of him. My first thought was, what the hell is this? Why did it appear in front of me? Tony Stark is a headache. Yes, as a member of the Illuminati in the Avengers Alliance, Tony Stark has been having a lot of headaches recently. Since Wanda said that there are no mutants in the world, more than 90% of the mutants on the Earth have disappeared. Because of this incident, the world has become very chaotic. Tony Stark is now very envious of the multi-parallel universe that Mr. Fantastic Reed once opened. Even though, the Tony Stark in that universe doesn't look alike to himself at all. Even if the size of that universe looks different from the size of your own universe. But that universe doesn't have the Fantastic Four, and there's no mutant. This made me extremely envious. Where would it be like in the current world, because Wanda's origin magic power broke out and plunged the world into extreme chaos? 783 At present, the most important thing is to quickly research the next armor. The combination of venom and armor will definitely increase the strength of the armor by a large amount. The only bad thing is that although Liquid is afraid of fire in high decibel volume. Tisk. This is something I should pay attention to. After all, Peter Parker relied on these 2 points to defeat Venom. But then again, everyone calls themselves playboys. But Spider-Man, a good neighbor in New York who debuted earlier than himself, still wanders between Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy. Not to mention he's had some time with Black Cat and Silver Sable. God, Peter Parker's feelings are much richer than his own. No wonder I idolized him even before I became Iron Man. In the comics, Peter Parker is Tony's idol. Looking at it now, I have calmed down, and I finally got married with Pepper, and both already have a child. But this guy Peter Parker is still messing with Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy. Who dares to say that he is a playboy in the future? Then he will definitely hit the door wearing a battle armor. No, it went off track. It is said that since having a daughter, my thinking has spread very well. The most important thing right now is not to manage Peter Parker's love triangle, but to integrate Venom with his armor. Friday, are the analysis logs for Venom and Warframe ready? Mr. Definitely, the information is ready, and according to your instructions, I printed a copy and put it on the table, so that you can watch it anytime before going to bed and between going to the bathroom. Wow. That's really sweet. With a sigh, Tony Stark set his sights on the information printed out on the table. Although Friday is more intimate, but I still prefer the old Jarvis. Unfortunately, Jarvis became Vision and wanted to destroy the world. Fortunately, he saved a hand and built Ultron himself to prevent Vision's plot to destroy the world. Well, Fantasy World wants to destroy the world. Ultron saves the world. Wanda said that there is no more mutant in the world. Brothers and sisters should have guessed that world. What is it? It is not about Duja. Picking up the materials on the table, I suddenly looked at the materials and put the F notebook there. Looking at the black gold diary that appeared out of nowhere, Tony Stark's expression suddenly became vigilant. Subconsciously, he patted the watch on his wrist and put on the nano armor gloves. Then he looked around and said to Friday, "Friday, scan the entire laboratory to check for signs of intrusion." Although the number of mutants in this world has decreased by more than 90% at once, there are still some mutants. And mutants' ability can be said to be various. Who knows if that eyeless mutant will invade his laboratory? Sir, according to the scan results, there is no trace of intrusion in the laboratory, and the results of the life detector show that there is no one else in the laboratory except you. Sure. Mr. Definitely, according to the carbon-based biological test results, apart from you, there is not even a single moth in the laboratory. Hearing Friday's answer, Tony lowered his guard slightly. Then what happened to the black gold diary on the table? I can be quite sure that there is no black gold diary on the table just after printing the materials. Black gold diary. Sir, I don't quite know what you are talking about. It's the black cover on the table with the bronzing lettering on it. You can't scan it? Hearing what Friday said, he didn't know what the black gold diary was. Tony Stark frowned suddenly. Sorry, sir. There is nothing on the table except your research log, information, and some parts needed for the armor. Water? Frowning, Tony Stark was sure that Friday wasn't lying to himself. It's just that such a big black gold diary is placed on the table. How could it be possible to not see it on Friday? The armor wrapped in nano gloves carefully picked up the black gold diary. After confirming that there was no danger, he raised the diary in his hand and asked Friday again. But Friday's answer was still nothing. Even turning on the mirror reflection can see that there is nothing in Tony's hand in the mirror. That is to say, only I can see it. Looking at the empty hands in the mirror, but the reality is that he is indeed holding this black gold diary. Tony Stark pondered for a while, then sat on the chair and opened it carefully. The imaginary danger did not come, but it was beyond Tony Stark's expectation. This is really just an ordinary black gold diary. Well, although I don't know how this black gold UG notebook came about. I also don't know why only I can see it, however, just take a look. Thinking of this, Tony Stark flipped through the first diary entry. The universe where Su-Che lives. It's actually Tony Stark from the multi-parallel universe. Looking at the newly added places in the black gold diary, he was slightly taken aback by. But soon, it was reflected. You must know that the new places in the black gold diary can only be obtained by killing the enemies created by yourself. But now, because his strength has reached level single universe, an additional quota has been added to the system. Moreover, it is not from its own universe. Does that mean that in the future world, it is very likely that after the secret invasion, there will be multi-universe events? After all, whether it is Doctor Strange 2 or the TV series Time Administration, there are things about multi-universe. Su-Che. Lying on the sofa and looking at the black gold diary, Tony Stark said to Friday, "Friday, I ask you to find the information about the super ability Su-Che?" "Sir, there are many people with the name Su-Che all over the world, but no super ability user, whether it is Shield Heavenly Sword Bureau, Shenlance Bureau, or Mutant Records, does not meet your requirements." Listening to Friday's words, Nay Stark nodded. In fact, Tony Stark came out a long time ago, and the universe he is in does not have the name Su-Che. Just like the owner of this black gold diary, when he entered the universe without mutants, he couldn't find his peers in the first diary entry. This is normal. According to the Juggler Doctor, not everyone in the multi-parallel universe has a division body. Like that America Chavez, it is estimated that this superhero named Su-Che is also the same. Moreover, the timeline of the universe I am in is that members of the Avengers Alliance have defeated Vision with the help of Ultron. It has been a long time since the Battle of New York, but there is still no superhero named Su-Che. This also means that there is no Su-Che in this universe. Thinking of this, Tony Stark felt a little regretful. If someone as powerful as Su-Che was in his own universe, maybe he and the Illuminati would not have to worry about it so much. After flipping through the fourth diary, Tony Stark frowned slightly. Olivia Temple? Why is this name so familiar? After thinking about it for a long time, Tony Stark couldn't figure out where he had heard this name before. But one thing is certain, that is, the name Tony feels very familiar. The first villain created by Su-Che, directly called the Messenger of Galactus. Friday, do a search for the name Olivia Temple for me and see if I have a record. Listening to Tanya Stark's words, Friday immediately began to search. Sir, the name Olivia Temple, you once dreamed about it in a dream. It was before the Battle of New York, and after you woke up, you asked Mengwace to record this name in the memo. Listening to Friday's answer, Tony Stark immediately called up the long-ago memo. Sure enough, on the other side of the memo, the name Olivia Temple was recorded. Olivia Temple. An envoy who claims to be one of the 5 great gods, the devourer of the planet. His whole body is covered with magma armor. 2 burning chains can destroy everything. He can use spiritual power to pollute ordinary people and make them become a fearless subordinate. Look at what I recorded after I dreamed. Tony Stark sucked in a toothache. God. I actually had this record. Could it be something about the multi-parallel universe that interfered with me? This is impossible. According to Mr. Fantastic, there will not be any interference in the multi-parallel universe. Even I once thought that dreams are a matter of multiple parallel universes, but it was also denied by Mr. Fantastic. After all, the timeline and time flow rate of each multi-parallel universe are different. He thinks this is just a fantasy of drinking too much, or an illusion when the brain cells are too active when dreaming. So even if I have dreamed for several days in a row, what about myself taking hallucinogens, the self who is on the verge of destruction, the self who has become a zombie, or even the self who has become a villain? Tony Stark didn't pay too much attention to it, just read it as a story. But now, after seeing the name Olivia Temple appear on the black gold diary, Tanya Stark suddenly felt that things were not that simple. The diary kept turning backwards. When seeing what is recorded in the diary, the Avengers Alliance will break up. Tony Stark laughed. The Avengers Alliance has broken up now, because I already know that Steve Rogers has concealed his affairs. But unexpectedly, Su-Che's own counterpart in the universe where Su-Che is. To know about this in advance, even before Steve Rogers. When you see the Battle of New York, the Battle of the Church, the Battle of Ultron. Inexplicably, Tony really began to envy himself in that universe. Although, the self in that universe and Pepper have not yet married, let alone the birth of little Morgan. But, in that universe without mutants, the relationship among the members of the Avengers Alliance is unexpectedly so good. Is there something like the Avengers alliance in the universe I'm in? Not to mention the Illuminati or something. It's just that when I flipped through the diary to the end, I saw the paragraph where it said that Tony took hallucinogens, and the zombie Iron Man in the white tank Iron Man. Tanya Stark sat up from the sofa all of a sudden, goosebumps appeared instantly, and even the fine hairs stood on end. God. This is not a fantasy produced by my brain cells being too active. The dream I had during that time turned out to be real. It is really a connection between several of their own peers in the multi-parallel universe. Subconsciously rubbing his cheeks. Damn it, I actually listened to what Mr. Fantastic said and thought it was my dream. Thinking of this, Tony Stark felt a little annoyed. Damn it, if I wasn't on the sidelines at the time, I wouldn't even be at 90.3 billion. Then maybe, I will be able to connect with myself in the multi-parallel universe. This is definitely the most incredible thing in your life. Thinking of this, I can't wait to slap myself a few times. What have you done yourself? Feeling annoyed, Tony Stark continued to look back. Ragnarok? This incident has already happened. Thor was blind in one eye, and after being laughed at by himself for several days, he wanted to change his eyeball, but he refused. Thanos of the Eternals. The juggler reminded himself of this matter, saying that this is the future he saw through Time Gem following Professor X's words. So the Illuminati has made a lot of preparations in advance. However, looking at what was written in the diary, Thanos, who snapped his fingers and destroyed half of the universe, is actually very heavy for the Earth. Thinking of this, Tony Stark fell into deep thought. In the main universe where Su-Che is, listening to the notification sound of the system at this moment, Su-Dee didn't care. Because, at this moment, Su-Che has broken through the atmosphere and stood in the real universe. Crazy. This was Nick Fury's first idea. Ever since I heard the news that Su-Che is going to fly into outer space and stand in the universe. Nick Fury's first impression was that Su-Che was crazy. It's just that when I saw that Su-Che really flew into outer space without any scruples, and then detected it with S.H.I.E.L.D.'s satellite chain in space. Su-Che actually penetrated the atmosphere, stood in space, and even ran in the direction of the sun after the flight. Nick Fury was silent for a long time, which was rare. He really wanted to know, for a superhero as powerful as Su-Che, how did the universe he once lived in be destroyed? This is so unreasonable. So strong that Su-Che, without any protective measures, can survive in the universe by relying on physical strength alone. With such a powerful superhero, how strong does the guy who destroyed the universe he used to be in have to be? That's right, Captain Marvel Carol can also stand in space and fly in space like Su-Che. But there is a big difference between Carol and Su-Che. If it is said that Carol's ability is brought by gems, then Su-Che's ability is entirely his own. Relying on one's own ability rather than a foreign medium, this is the scariest thing. Because one is fixed, the other can continue to grow. Everyone knows which of the two strengths has a higher upper limit. Nick Fury felt that he couldn't imagine, according to what he said in the Black Gold Diary, how terrifying the full strength of Su-Che was. But now it seems that the strength and destructive power displayed by Su-Che is definitely higher than that of Captain Marvel Carol. Su-Che's ability, Nick Fury has analyzed it very carefully. The first is the first display, the ability to control water. Needless to say how powerful water is, if Su-Che thinks, he can easily use water to destroy a country, or even the entire Earth. Then there is a strong defense, no matter what attack, even mushroom eggs can't hurt him. This is confirmed by the events of Ultron. Su-Che carried the mushroom eggs into the sea, and nothing happened in the violent explosion. Psychic magic can immunize the enemy from mental control. Psychokinesis can easily complete all kinds of unimaginable attacks. There is also the thermal vision that I only discovered later. According to Nick Fury's energy conversion prediction, the energy of Su-Che's heat site definitely exceeds 40,000 degrees Fahrenheit. 40,000 degrees Fahrenheit is about 22,200 degrees Celsius. Now, Inch has shown super speed AA again. Flying from Su-Che, the upward distance of 6,400 kilometers took less than 3 seconds. This is definitely faster than the speed of light. Moreover, after Su-Che entered space, without any protective measures on his skin, he actually faced the entire universe. What is this? Super defense, or super life? So there is this, why? Although Su-Che didn't show it, there is more than just a lack of air in the universe as a danger. Nick Fury no longer knows how to judge Su-Che's strength. Anyway, in Nick Fury's heart, Su-Che at this moment is definitely stronger than Captain Marvel Carol. Nick Fury gave up his assessment of Su-Che in his heart. It was Maria Hill who watched the picture of Su-Che standing in the middle of the universe and facing the sun directly from the satellite link. Then he said to Nick Fury, he can move freely in the universe. This is really amazing, eh? Hearing that there was something in Hill's words, Nick Fury asked, "What do you want to say?" "Remember the moon base we're building?" Looking at Nick Fury, Maria Hill said, "Some time ago there were some accidents outside the moon base, so I had to send some people to go outside for repairs. As a result, due to an operation error, an engineer's spacesuit was ruptured, and the whole person was directly exposed to the vacuum environment of the universe. In just the blink of an eye, this engineer has almost turned into a crystal clear crystal. So what? So, if we can invite Da Su to build our moonbase for us, or be a part of building the moonbase, maybe our moonbase will be completed very early." Pointing to Su Che standing in the middle of the universe, facing the strong sunlight, Maria Hill said jokingly, "Come on, I can't imagine Su holding a wrench to build a base." Facing Maria's joke, Nick Fury laughed. "But have you found out why Su crossed the atmosphere and flew into the universe?" "I don't know, there is no news from the Avengers Alliance base. Do you want me to call Natasha Romanoff to inquire, or let her go back to the Avengers Alliance base?" Faced with Hill's proposal, after thinking about the end of the Ultron incident, he drove a motorcycle and ran to Natasha Romanoff, who was preparing to live an ordinary life for a while in another small town. Nick Fury waved his hand. "Forget it, before the world is safe, let the superheroes of the Avengers Alliance live the life they like. We can't ask them to risk their lives to save the world while asking them not to live the lives of ordinary people. This is very unfair to them." Like Steve ran over to the closed Wakanda side. "By the way, what's going on with Scott Lang?" Listening to Nick asking about Scott Lang, Hill said, "It's okay, I passed Scott Lang's file to Sue, and Sue agreed to Scott Lang's joining the Avengers Alliance reserve team. At the moment, Scott Lang is with Sam and Rod. However, Dr. Pym is still unwilling to return to S.H.I.E.L.D., although Dr. Pym attended the funeral of Howard Stark and his wife. But because of his wife's death, but his daughter Hope has no objection to S.H.I.E.L.D. Maybe it won't be long before Hope can join S.H.I.E.L.D. Hearing Hill's words, Nick Fury sat back on the chair. "You follow up on this matter, after all, apart from world-class dangers, you don't have to bother Su Che and the others. The most important thing for S.H.I.E.L.D. is to give them a safe and comfortable living environment for ordinary people. As for what S.H.I.E.L.D. can't solve, let's invite members of the Avengers Alliance reserve team other than Wanda to solve it, just to train them." "Good." Listening to Nick Fury's instructions, Hill nodded, then turned and left. After Hill left, Nick Fury watched the video, Su Che standing in the universe facing the sun. Inexplicably, Nick Fury always felt that Su Che seemed to be absorbing the sun's ability. Sounds ridiculous. After all, Su doesn't draw energy from sunlight like Superman in the comics. Even, the nickname Pepper gave him back then was Superman. 37,000, 39,000, 45,000, 3 days later. When the system prompts, the power of the heat vision has been increased to 50,000 degrees, and it has successfully evolved from heat vision to hot world line. Only then did Su Che open his eyes. In the next second, 2 fiery red lines burst out from Su Che's eyes. Directly smash a meteorite around the Earth into powder. Don't look at the difference between heat line of sight and heat world line. But there is a world of difference. If it is said that Su Che's initial heat vision has more than 30,000 degrees, it can be called an absolutely powerful existence. So now, Su Che's hot world line has evolved to the point where it can destroy the world. Let's put it this way, as long as Su Che thinks, the energy of the hot world line can easily penetrate and destroy the Earth. Well, actually after getting super life and super speed, Su Che asked the system if it could fly directly into the universe to receive the sun's radiation. The energy of the mushroom egg explosion can be said to be something that can be encountered but not sought after, raising one's heat sight to more than 10,000 degrees. But that is already the critical value of heat vision. So after inquiring about the system, Su Che flew through the atmosphere into space without any hesitation. Energy absorbing direct from the sun. Now that the hot line of sight has evolved to the hot world line, it can be regarded as having passed the threshold of level single universe's strength. In the next step, the promotion of the hot world line will reach the legend, and the existence of the plane will be opened. However, this improvement is estimated to be difficult, at least it will take time to accumulate. Thinking of this, Su Che shook the ice balls on the Silver Moon Knight battlesuit. Then he turned around and returned to Earth without any hesitation. At the same time, in the universe, there is a certain blue planet C that is exactly the same as the Earth. The blue sky, clear lake water, green grass carpet. Every plant and tree in the entire planet is very beautiful and harmonious. It's just that a guy in dark purple clothes stood in front of the monitor, but he didn't have the heart to appreciate the beautiful scenery. Instead, he frowns and looks at the creatures on Earth. Elephants with long noses, pigs, kangaroos. The violent K-Hill people, the silent Shi-Kejian people. As well as the fight scenes that appear at any time on the street, and the scenes of the strong bullying the weak in the corner. All this made the guy standing in front of the monitor very dissatisfied. Sir, according to the signal, a very powerful and perfect life form has appeared on the real Earth. The scientific researcher with a memory reader on his head hurriedly said to the supreme evolution in front of him. This life body rushed out of the atmosphere and came to the universe, triggering the events left over from our observation period on the Earth. Mechanism. According to the analysis of the triggered data, the life forms that appeared on the Earth are pure Earthlings, and their ability. Before the scientific researcher could finish speaking, Supreme Evolutionary Jien waved his hand and interrupted. I don't care what kind of super-perfect life forms appear on the Earth. The Earth is just a sad planet. Have you found the 89P13 experimental raccoon I asked you to look for? Turning around, Supreme Evolution stared at the experimenter in front of him and asked. Staring at the supreme evolution of the transformed spiritual body, the sweat on the experimenter's face slipped down instantly. Sir, according to our investigation, the 89P13 test subject raccoon got mixed up with a guy named Xingju, and there was a tree man beside them. As for their detailed location, we are still investigating, because this group of people is constantly spinning in the universe, and it is impossible to accurately locate them at all. Shut up. I don't want to hear your explanation. Walking towards the experimenter step by step, seeing the fear written on the experimenter's face, Supreme Evolution said viciously. I don't care what method you use, I will find that raccoon at 89P13 immediately. Only by copying his brain can I create a perfect living body. I repeat, I want you to find the 89P13 experimental subject at all costs, do you hear me? Yes, sir. Looking at the quail-like experimenter at the moment, Supreme Evolution snorted coldly. Let Aisha and the others use all their strength to find that raccoon. When I created Aisha and the others, maybe I shouldn't have turned their skin into gold. A group of idiots who thought they were noble. While talking, Supreme Evolution walked to the monitor and continued to watch the Earth he created. When Rocket Raccoon escaped, Supreme Evolution thought he had found the genetic formula for perfect evolution. But now it seems that on the Earth I created, there are still bad-tempered bastards who like to bully the weak. This means that your own creation has failed. As for what the experimenter said just now, a perfect life body appeared on the Earth and touched the monitoring mechanism he set up on the Earth back then? In this regard, the highest evolution does not care. In his cognition, the Earth is just a backward and sad planet. How could there be the perfect living body that he hoped for on such a planet? And as long as I get the brain of the escaped raccoon, I will be able to create a more perfect place than the Earth. It has to be said that Supreme Evolution is like a scientific research lunatic at the moment. The single-minded thought is to create a so-called perfect life body that is gentle and has no violent genes. This is very similar to the so-called collector. It's all so paranoid. At least Rocket Raccoon thinks so. Although it doesn't know, Supreme Evolution has never given up on capturing itself. But looking at the device with the Power Stone in mind, Rocket Raccoon feels that this collector is definitely not a good person. Never mind. As long as the money can be paid, anyway, as long as the idiot Peter Quill hands this gadget to the collector. You can get a lot of money by yourself. That's enough for myself and Groot to build a spaceship that's truly our own. Unfortunately, Layla, Floor and Daya couldn't see them anymore. Well, Earth. Sitting on the sofa, at this moment Pietro looked at his sister and brother-in-law, and sighed. Aren't I about to go to college? Matthew suggested that if I want to study law, I'd better go to Yale University. But even with Matthew's recommendation, Yale University still rejected my application. Speaking of this, Pietro spread out on the sofa and said helplessly, Sister, brother-in-law, although I am studying with Matthew, my basic grades are really bad. So really, I'm not surprised that Yale turned me down. Seeing Pietro leaning on the sofa helplessly, Wanda thought for a while, then turned her head to look at Suche. It's best to let your boyfriend come forward for this kind of thing, he should be able to solve it. Yale. What, little things? Hearing Suche say that Pietro wanted to go to Yale University, Tony Stark immediately said, it doesn't matter if it's Yale University, Harvard, or Southern California. Even any of the top 20 universities in the world, as long as Pietro wants to study, then there is no problem. You know, although Stark Industries used to research and manufacture weapons, it had more or less connections with these universities. After all, Stark Industry also needs talents, but how can Stark Industry obtain these outstanding talents from universities? The answer is to build a good relationship with these schools. For example, donate money to these schools. That's why Hammer Industries couldn't catch up to Stark Industries from the beginning to the end. That idiot Justin Hammer, I thought it was a weapon before. Speaking of this, Tony Stark picked up the phone and dialed while blinking at Suche. Actually, the steady stream of constantly talented people is the reason why Stark Industry has never failed. The phone got connected and Wani Stark started connecting with the people at Yale. Watching Tony talking on the phone, Suche came to the test bench. Looking at the holographic projection of the nano armor, Suche reached out and put the holographic projection of the nano armor on his hand. Jarvis, what step has Tony's nano armor made? Mr. Stark's nano armor has actually been completed, and the update research of the second generation nano armor is underway. According to Mr. Stark, although the nano armor is convenient, compared with other styles of classic armor, it lacks a bit of moving mechanical feeling. The Mark armor that lacks the sense of mechanics is like losing its soul. Listening to Jarvis' explanation, Suche thought about the nano armor of Avengers Alliance 3, and the nano warfare of Avengers Alliance 4 full of mechanical sense. Then he nodded in agreement. That's a good point, after all, armor full of mechanical sense is quite handsome. You feel the same way? After finishing the phone call, Tony came over and looked at Suche's holographic projection on Suche's palm. Immediately, he proudly raised his eyebrows and said to Suche, "Dude, the first generation of nano armor has been researched, wait a minute, let me show you." With that said, Tony took a step back, then patted his clothes lightly. In the next second, the classic color-matched nano armor slowly began to cover Tony's body. With just an effort to take off his glasses, the red and gold nano armor appeared on Tony's body. How about it, handsome? With that said, Tony waved to Suche. Come, accompany me to try the maximum endurance of this set of nano warfare. Facing Tony's request, Suche did not refuse, but took off with Tony and then disappeared into the night. After more than 10 minutes, breaking free from the mountain, he saw a humanoid imprint smashed out on the rock wall of the mountain behind him. Tony Stark coughed a few times, then looked at Suche and complained, "Dude, I haven't provoked you recently, I seriously suspect that you are avenging yourself. Kong Mang, your punch is almost embedded in the stone for me. If it weren't for the strong resistance of the battle armor in the impact force, I guess I would be a meatloaf by your punch now." Watching Tony open his visor, he looked at himself faintly and complained. Suche sat on the stone with a smile and said, "Didn't you say that you want to test the strength of the nano armor? Just now you said that I should punch you with all my strength. Tisk, I didn't even use 1/10 of my strength." I do not believe. Hearing what Suche said, the punch just now didn't use half of his energy. Tony Stark immediately vetoed. "You are definitely bragging, my god. The punch just now has been analyzed by Jarvis, and it has at least 50 tons of impact force. You said that this is less than 1/20 of your strength. I wouldn't believe it even if I was killed. Look at Tony like you're definitely bragging." Suche didn't play with him, but came to the mountain. Looking at the huge boulder more than 30 meters high in front of him, he clenched his fist with lightning speed, and punched directly at the mountain wall in front of him. Boom. The violent muffled sound lingered in the surrounding area for a second, and then cracks appeared one after another on the mountains more than 30 meters high. Accompanied by a violent rumbling sound, before Tony could react, he saw the entire tall mountain centered on Suche's fist and began to collapse. Almost in the blink of an eye, accompanied by the sound of rumbling boulders rolling down, a mountain that was originally complete turned into a pile of ruins in an instant. Hiss. Seeing the intact mountain peak in front of him, it was smashed to pieces by Suche's punch. Tony Stark gasped subconsciously, "This is so frightening. Thinking about what if this punch hit my nano armor just now." Thinking of this, Tony Stark felt his hairs stand on end. "Jarvis, how many guesses are there in Sus punch just now?" "Sir, according to the analysis of Mr. Sus punch just now, the impact force is at least 500 tons, and it is analyzed according to Mr. Sus fighting habits. That punch just now did not use all its strength to strike." Listening to Jarvis' analysis, Tien Stark was truly speechless. After a while, he said to Suche, "You are not a real human being, no wonder Pepper gave you the nickname Superman back then. I think you might as well stop being called Silver Moon Knight from now on, and just call Clark Kent directly." Even though he said so, Tony Stark had a very obvious smile on his face. Who would dislike having a powerful friend like Sue on his side? Well, sure enough, the Avengers Alliance is Destiny 7. Evening, Asgard. Watching the raft carrying the mother's bodies slowly return to the distance along the river. The look on Thor's face was saddened to the extreme. On the other hand, Loki's eyes were full of sadness. Although he knew it was this result, although he had seen this result more than once in the Time Management Bureau. Even for this reason Loki never left his mother for a few days. But in the end, she still didn't save her mother from the hands of the Dark Elves. His eyes drifted away along the raft until the mother's body was no longer in sight. Loki lowered his head and murmured in pain, and then the other Asgards threw their torches into the river. Loki. After all this was done, Thor turned his head and looked at Loki sadly. But unexpectedly, he was knocked to the ground by Loki's heavy punch. Although the mother has long accepted such a fate, and even prevents herself from interfering with her fate. But looking at Thor's face, Loki couldn't help but throw this punch. Loki. Loki, what are you doing? Seeing that Loki knocked Thor down with one punch, the three warriors of Asgard and Sif hurried forward, trying to help Thor up. But who knows, Thor waved his hand to stop him. Sitting on the ground, Mjolnir aside. Watching the Asgard warriors return, Thor signaled Sif to leave with the three warriors of Asgard. After everyone had left, Thor lowered his head. Now I finally know why you returned to Asgard, and when you heard that I brought Jane back, you wanted to fight with me right away. So, you expected all this, didn't you? So, I am the real murderer who killed my mother? Looking at Thor sitting on the ground with his head bowed, his face full of grief. Loki, who was originally full of anger in his heart, is full of what he has seen in his mind, which belongs to himself and his future. After a moment, Loki sighed. Then he also sat on the ground, beside Thor. I was in the Time Administration, and I saw that my mother was killed by a dark elf. So when I learned that you brought Jane Foster back to Asgard, I didn't even hesitate to fall out with Mobius and Tony Stark, and I came back to stop it. My mother was raised by a witch after all, and she saw my soul the moment she saw me. She prevented me from telling her the fate of the future, and she did not allow me to change the future that belongs to her. I am not allowed to tell you this matter. Having said that, Loki gave a wry smile and buried his head on his knees. What can I do? What else can I do? These days, I can only be by my mother's side all the time. But after all, I still can't save my mother. Talking about Ji Yong, looking at the night sky lying on Kai. I can't accept this result, but I don't have the ability at all to change my mother's life. Even if I see the future, so what? Damn it, everything that should happen is still happening. Halfway through the speech, Loki was choked up and unable to speak. Big tears kept streaming down, and in the end, he lay on the Bifrost covering his face and cried bitterly. Gradually, Loki curled up into a ball, like a child who lost everything. Helpless, sad, hopeless, Lu never denied his mother's love. For more than 1,500 years, although I hope to get my father's attention and approval. But only Loki knows that whenever his father puts his eyes on Thor, whenever he ignores himself again and again. It was the mother who gently comforted herself, and even taught herself magic. But he couldn't do anything, even knowing that his mother would die, he still couldn't save her. How does this keep Loki from despairing? Loki. Looking at Loki who curled up on the Bifrost and broke down and cried bitterly, Thor couldn't hold back his tears. For more than 1,500 years, Thor has seen the cunning Loki, the proud Loki, and all kinds of roadbeds. But, as it is now, this is the first time Thor has seen Loki who collapsed and cried like a helpless child. He put his arms around Loki who was trembling from crying. Thor wiped away his tears, and then said to Loki, "This matter is not over yet, the blood debt needs to be paid with blood. Loki, I need you to stand by my side, go find that damned dark elf together, and let them know what a terrible price to pay for killing our mother." Thor's eyes were red and his tone was fierce, as if he wanted to eat those dark elves alive at this moment. A desperate desire for revenge filled Thor's heart. Since I and Loki have no way to save my mother, then let the dark elves bury her with her. Earth. Looking at the display on the system, the number of holders of the Black Gold Diary, that is, Li Jia's name, became dim. At this moment, Su Che also knew that Queen Frigga had an accident and lost her life. The holder of the Black Gold Diary, Queen Frigg of Asgard, lost her life due to irresistible factors, so the holder of the Black Gold Diary will be added as a follow-up. The system is selecting new holders. The Black Gold Diary's replacement quota is confirmed, the survivors of the eternal family of Titans, Thanos. Looking at the system because of Frigg's death, the reserve quota was opened. After the quota was randomly generated, it was actually given to Thanos. Even Su Che was a little surprised, but it's right to think about it carefully. After all, the Black Gold Diary does not stipulate that the holder must be a superhero or a supervillain. Otherwise, Hela wouldn't be the holder of the Black Gold Diary. But, Thanos really thought it over. In the next diaries, maybe Thanos should add some drama. I don't know where and what skills can be brushed from Thanos. Universe, on the planet Chitauri. Desolation and darkness seem to have become the tone of the Chitauri planet. Not even a trace of life can be seen on this planet except Chitauri. As far as the eye could see, it was a barren land. Its desolation is not even a weed. In the middle of planet Chitauri stands a not-so-luxurious palace. To be precise, this former Gideon should be very luxurious. It's just after the war, the exhaustion of resources, the massacre and so on. This once incomparably luxurious palace now seems to have been withered by the wind and rain. Inside the palace, holding a fist-file-size fruit and eating it, Thanos paid no attention to the quarrel between the Chitauri king and Nebula at the moment beneath the throne. If it was the king of Chitauri who quarreled with Gamora, he would have killed the king of Chitauri long ago. But Nebula. Well, although they are all adopted by themselves. Although compared to Xingyun, I dote on Kayla more and treat Kayla like a daughter. Xingyun, let's go. He waved his hand to stop the quarrel between King Chitauri and Nebula. Thanos said directly, Xingyun, for bringing Kayla back. Yes, father. Hearing that Thanos finally favored him, Nebula sneered at King Chitauri, then knelt down on one knee and said, I will definitely bring Gamora back alive. At the same time, I will let everyone know what will happen to those who betray their father. After speaking, Xingyun got up and glanced contemptuously at King Chitauri, then turned and left. In fact, Xingyun has always known that his father loves his sister Gamora more than himself. But even so, Xingyun wanted to prove to his father that he was stronger than his sister. This time, Gamora's betrayal, Nebula thinks this is a very good opportunity. Just bring Gamora back, and father will know who is most useful to him. Huh. That being said, why do you feel that Nebula and Loki are the perfect match? Watching Nebula leave, Thanos waved his hand, indicating that the king of Chitauri can also leave. After he turned around respectfully and left, Thanos then picked up the black gold diary next to the throne. This black gold diary appeared out of thin air, which Thanos knows very well. Because it just surfaced in an instant under his nose. It's not any magical effect, after all Ebony Maw was there just now. If it is a magical effect, then neither he nor he can sense it. The only thing that is certain is that only you can see this black gold diary. For this kind of thing, Thanos didn't have any suspicion or vigilance. In fact, after so many years of battle in the universe, Thanos has seen even more bizarre things. Compared to those, the appearance of a black gold diary out of thin air is nothing serious. However, picking up the black gold diary and opening it, Thanos was still slightly surprised. Because the words used in the black gold diary turned out to be the words used by the Titans of the Eternal Clan. The reason for saying this is because the Titan Star Clan also belongs to the Eternal Clan. But the civilization of the Titan family is different from the civilizations of other Eternal families scattered in the universe. Be it technology or text. So when he saw the familiar words, even Mie was slightly surprised. After all, as the last survivor of Titan, Thanos thought that this kind of writing would gradually disappear with his future death. Opening the black gold diary, I read the first diary. Looking at the contents recorded in the black gold diary, Thanos subconsciously frowned that didn't exist. Parallel worlds? Multiple parallel universes? Oh, interesting. Seeing that the opening chapter was about introducing himself, Mie took off his helmet and hung it on his double-edged sword. Then looked carefully, except that the first diary entry surprised Thanos a bit. For the rest of the follow-up diaries, Thanos didn't have any emotional waves in his heart. All these years of fighting on one planet after another has already made Thanos feel at peace. What love, what friendship, this is not important to Thanos. To get infinite gems, thus accomplish that great goal. Thanos felt he could sacrifice everything. Even if he is called a butcher, he is hated by countless people. Everything that happened on Titan is just a microcosm of the universe. If you don't interfere, the universe will run out of resources sooner or later and fall into darkness. So for a long time, the district has always maintained an extremely cold-blooded state. Nothing can interfere with him, even if you get this black gold diary. Even in the first chapter of the black gold diary, the owner of this black gold diary traveled from other multi-parallel universes. This has nothing to do with my big cause, when I saw the content written in the black gold diary, claiming to be the messenger of the gods. Thanos laughed, then closed the black gold diary. Get up from the throne, put on the helmet and the double-edged sword, and look at Ebony Maw and others who have been prepared. Then he issued an order to continue to carry out his great cause. God? I have been walking in the universe for so long, and it's not like I haven't killed the so-called gods. Those so-called gods are nothing more than stronger existences. Not really a god. At least, in Thanos' heart, there are only those few who can be called gods. However, those gods never cared about things in the universe. Earth. Tisk W. Smacking his mouth, looking at the display on the system, Thanos got the black gold diary. Just after the trust value fluctuated, before it reached 5%, it disappeared directly. Su Che raised his eyebrows slightly. There is only one case of this kind of thing, that is, after Thanos read a few diaries, he just closed it and didn't read any more. Obviously, either Mie didn't care about what was written in this black gold diary at all. After all, the spoiler is mainly aimed at the Earth, which is not very attractive to Thanos. The appearance of the black gold diary is more like a story that can kill time. Or, Thanos had something to do, so he didn't read any further. If it's the latter, it's fine, Thanos is pretty busy after all. Before the 6 infinite gems are collected, only one planet with one descends, and then manually complete the task. But if it is the former, then it is a bit difficult to screen. But Su Che knows that Thanos is an absolutely determined person, and he will never give up his mission just because of some so-called spoilers, or some people's persuasion, hatred, and the like. Therefore, Su Che actually has no better way. After all, even if Su Che's next diary is mostly related to Thanos, but he doesn't look at his ability. You can't fly into the universe to find Thanos, and then choke his neck and force him to continue watching. Forget it, the strategy remains the same, let's talk about it after Mie opens the black gold diary next time. At present, it can only be like this. At the same time, inside Wakanda. I don't think it's a good choice for me to leave Wakanda and go back. Looking at Steve in front of him, the Winter Soldier, who had almost recovered his memory, leaned back on the chair. For more than 70 years, I have committed too many crimes and killed too many people. I even killed Tony Stark's parents. While you're right, Steve, it's not my will, and it's not what I want to do. But the truth is, I made all of these with my own hands. Some things are definitely not something that can be solved simply by saying that I am controlled by others and I can't help myself. Having said that, Bucky Barnes lowered his head and laughed, picked up the ice water on the table and drank it all in one gulp. Go back, Steve, your world still needs you, and as for me, it's fine for now. I made a mistake on Wakanda's side, and I'm going to make up for my mistakes here. Until I pay for the mistakes I made in Wakanda, I'm thinking about other things. Speaking, Bucky stood up, smiled and hugged Steve. 70 years later, you also have your friends, your team members. They are a group of heroes who have saved the world time and time again. Don't disappoint, kill them. Bucky. I'm fine. Smiling and patted Steve's shoulder, Bucky Barnes said very freely. This place is actually very good, at least I like it very much. Maybe I'll go back after paying off the mistakes I made in Wakanda. But before that, Steve, don't do anything stupid. Facing Bucky's smile, Steve was silent for a few seconds, then smiled and hugged him. How come, you did all the stupid things? 3 months later, inside Tony Stark's villa. I always feel that this guy has no good intentions. Looking at his boss, Happy said. Actually, everyone knows that you like Ms. Pepper very much. But that guy asked Ms. Pepper to dinner, can you believe it? Having said that, I looked at the boss with a nonchalant expression. Can't help but said helplessly. Hey Tony, I think you should take this kind of thing seriously. You have to know that although I'm not a super ability user, let alone a mind reader, I really think that guy has bad intentions for the biased lady. Listening to Happy nagging constantly in his ear, Tony Stark said while modifying the armor with a screwdriver. Come on, Happy, I have great confidence in Pepper. And it's just a normal business partner's invitation to dinner, what's wrong with file size? Looking at Tony, he didn't believe his own judgment very much. Happy suddenly patted himself on the head speechlessly. You should believe me, really Tony, I really think of this guy. Okay, I believe you can't do it. Facing Happy's swearing look. Tony put down the tools in his hands, got up and went to Harpy to straighten his suit. Dude, you are now the head of the security department of our Stark Industry. So if there is danger, then you should stay with Stark Industries at this time, shouldn't you? As for Pepper, trust me, I'll take care of it. Looking at Tony's perfunctory eyes, Happy shook his head speechlessly. Alright, don't say I didn't warn you anyway. Besides, since you like Peebo, you can get married and propose. You are already at this age, and you should get married. After speaking, Happy turned around and prepared to leave. Don't touch the plant in the pot by the door of the lab. Tony, who knew Happy's character well, watched Happy turn and leave, and immediately instructed. It's just that after Harpy walked to the door, he watched Tony turn around and continue to study the armor. After hesitation for a few seconds, he reached out and picked one of the leaves. Zila. The leaves had just been plucked, and in the next second, a trace of electric current came out of the plant, and then the electric current smashed the glass cabinet above. Hey man, can't you just listen to me once? Hearing the sound, He turned around and looked at the shards of glass in the plants that were beginning to wither. Tony Stark said helplessly to Happy. He looked at the leaf in his hand, and then at Tony Stark. Happy shrugged his shoulders. Well, you're the boss, even though you didn't listen to me. After speaking, Happy left with a guilty conscience. This bastard. Holding his waist and shaking his head speechlessly, Tony Stark turned around and prepared to continue researching and improving the armor. After thinking about it, he said to Jarvis, Jarvis, what are the other members of the Avengers Alliance doing? Sir, Ms. Natasha Romanoff is not out of S.H.I.E.L.D., so she should be on mission at present. Mr. Barton should be with his wife and daughter. Why? After Captain Rogers came back from Wakanda, where he was training Sam and Colonel Rhodes, Thor returned to Asgard. Dr. Banner drove the Quinjet fighter and left without a trace. According to the last search result of the Stark Industrial Satellite, Dr. Banner drove the Quinjet fighter away from the Earth. What? Listening to the words of Jarvis, Tony Stark stopped his research. You mean, Bruce left the Earth with a Quinjet fighter jet? Why did he do this? The purpose? And he didn't tell us. Sir, I don't know exactly what happened, but after the Ultron incident, Dr. Banner and Mr. Nick Fury had a detailed discussion. After he came back, he accidentally mentioned the term moonbase, but he closed his mouth after saying this term. In less than half a month, he left the Earth in a Quinjet fighter jet. Listening to what Jarvis said, Tony was silent for a while. Nick Fury is related. A moonbase? Could it be that S.H.I.E.L.D. built a moonbase and needs Bruce's help? That's why Bruce left Earth. That's how it should be. As for Steve, if I'm not mistaken, that damn guy in Tuyi should be in Wakanda. This bastard thinks he can avoid me, huh? With a sneer, Tony was silent for a while. Where is Sue? Where did he and Wanda go? Sir, Mr. Sue and Ms. Wanda have returned to the eastern country that has been passed down for 5,000 years. It is not clear when they will come back. Really relaxing. Listen to Jarvis talking about Suche and Wanda's track, Tony said a little enviously. Then he looked at the ring placed on the table in a very inconspicuous small box. Forget it. After Sue comes back, I'm going to propose to Peebo. Sue, the witness, is not here, so I always feel that there is something missing. After saying a word, Tony continued to research and improve the armor. On the side of the bear, the base of the red house in the sky. Isn't it going to be captured in the end? Dekov, who has always been in charge of the red house, sat on a chair and watched Natasha Romanoff, who was captured by a group of Black Widows he controlled. Dekov swiped lightly on the screen in front of him. Soon, following Dekov's order, a team of Black Widows pressed. Yelena walked in. When your sister defected to the red house, I should have killed you, Yelena, but out of appreciation for you, I didn't do it. Having said that, Dekov shook his head in disappointment. Even later, Natasha Romanoff took that Clint Barton and blew up my house, trying to kill my second son. I still haven't done anything to you. I always thought that as long as I could spare you and not lump you and your sister together, you would always be loyal to the Red House. But now it seems that I was wrong. In the den of thieves, there will never be a loyal person. Facing Dekov's words, Yelena, who was restrained, spat at him viciously. Loyalty. You deserve it? People like you will never end well. After cursing Dekov, Yelena turned her head and looked at Natasha Romanoff. Have you lost your vigilance after so many years of not having to dodge the hunt? You were actually caught by them. If I had known this earlier, I wouldn't have regarded you as my last card. Facing Yelena's words, Natasha Romanoff, who was also restrained, sat on the ground and smiled at her sister. If they didn't use you to threaten me, do you think I would have been caught? So I have to thank you? Thank you for taking the initiative to send me to die with me? Tisk, your temper is getting worse and worse now. Hearing Yelena's cynicism, Natasha Romanoff shrugged her shoulders indifferently. Then he turned his head and looked at Dekov, the controller of the Red House. Can you tell me how you survived back then? You must know that when Barton and I blew up your house, it was very secretive and not many people knew about it. You probably don't know, otherwise your daughter wouldn't have stayed at home. Facing Natasha Romanoff's doubts, Dekov laughed. I'm going to die soon. Do you know what's the point of this? Definitely makes sense. Facing Dekov's question, he took a look at the bound, but kept curling his lips at Yelena. Natasha Romanoff said very seriously. Although I have incurred countless blood debts over the years, some blood debts were forced on me by you, and some blood debts were indirectly caused to avoid your pursuit. I know that no matter what I do, the blood debt caused by those years will never be repaid. But for your daughter who died in that explosion, I feel the most guilty. After all, she was only a teenager at that time, and she was innocent. Now Yelena and I have been controlled by you, and brought to the airbase of the Red House. There is no way to escape. So, even if it is death, let me die to understand. Looking at Natasha Romanoff, It seems that she is confessing her last words, and it seems that she wants to know the secret of the biggest guilt in her heart before she dies. Dekov thought for a while, then patted Mian lightly. Soon, the imitation master walked in with a special shield and a mask. Watching Natasha Romanoff look at the imitation master, Dekov said, "You think you and that fellow Hawkeye planned very carefully back then? But you forgot, Natasha Romanoff, after joining S.H.I.E.L.D., you don't have to hide from the Red House anymore, your thinking becomes slack. Here is my territory. Do you think that you and Hawkeye entered my territory and wanted to assassinate me, would I not know?" While Dekov was speaking, the master imitator slowly took off his helmet. Soon, a woman with obvious burn scars on her face appeared in Natasha Romanoff's field of vision. Seeing this woman, Natasha Romanoff was slightly taken aback. Dekov laughed loudly. "You thought your plan was successful? In fact, you only achieved half of it. The house was blown up by you and Hawkeye, but me and my daughter didn't die." "I see." It seemed like a stone that had been pressed in my heart fell to the ground. After Natasha Romanoff breathed a sigh of relief, she turned to look at Dekov. "I didn't expect you to be so vicious that even your daughter is controlled by you. But in this way, the guilt in my heart can be alleviated." "What's the use of saying this now?" Yelena, who was silent on the side, looked up at the ceiling speechlessly. "Even if you know this, don't you still die?" "Very useful." Seeing Yelena's speechless appearance, the restrained Natasha Romanoff suddenly laughed. "I'm actually here to solve this matter. Maybe we'll die, but I don't think it's today." Hearing Natasha Romanoff's words, Yelena was taken aback for a moment, and soon saw Natasha Romanoff's very confident smile. "You forgot, all these years, my friend is not only Hawkeye." As soon as Natasha Romanoff's voice fell, 2 heat lines of sight instantly penetrated the outer layer of the Red House airbase, causing a huge amount of gap. Amid waves of artificial intelligence sirens, Su Che, wearing the Silver Moon Knight cloak, flew in from the gap. Silver Moon Knight. Looking at Su Che, who directly broke through his sky fortress with heat vision and broke in like a Superman. Dekov's eyes widened suddenly. "You don't think that I dared to find my sister Yelena single-handedly without preparing anything, and then wanted to destroy the Red House base?" Breaking free from the restraints on her body in an instant, Natasha Romanoff stood up from the ground and looked at Dekov. "Anyway, I am also a member of Avengers. Why do you still think I'm the same Natasha Romanoff from 10 years ago? This is impossible." Ignoring Natasha Romanoff's words Dekov leaned on the table with both hands and looked at Su Che with red eyes. "Since I caught Natasha Romanoff, I have been monitoring the movement of the Sky Fortress in 100 miles in real time. Even if someone wants to attack my Sky Fortress, the satellites in the sky will definitely send back a signal. How could you break through my satellite surveillance? It's impossible." Seeing Dekov's utter disbelief, Natasha Romanoff pulled Yelena up from the side. "How did this idiot chase me down and kill me with nowhere to hide, and you had to hide your name?" As soon as Natasha Romanoff's voice fell, the entire castle in the sky flickered with an alarm sound in the next second. The castle that was originally flying in the air shook for a while, and then quickly began to fall towards the ground. From the moment Su Che came in, he directly used his heat vision to destroy the power system of the entire sky castle. The air castle that lost its power system naturally cannot continue to fly. "Damn it, you ruined my hard work, I want you to be buried with me." Seeing that all his years of painstaking efforts were ruined, the angry Dekov immediately activated all the Black Widows and rushed towards Su Che. He said something to be buried with him, but he immediately took out a parachute from under the table and put it on his body, preparing to escape. "Su, be merciful, they are all controlled by Dekov." Seeing dozens of Black Widows rushing towards Su Che, Natasha Romanoff immediately begged Su Che to spare them. Natasha Romanoff knew that although the group of Black Widows controlled by Dekov were very powerful, but in front of Su Che, he is as fragile as an ant that can be crushed to death by a shoe. Facing Natasha Romanoff's request, Su Che naturally did not refuse. These Black Widows are a big killer for ordinary people, but for themselves, seriously, not the slightest bit of threat. They turned their hands into knives and slashed on the necks of these Black Widows. The strength is just right. It can make these controlled Black Widows faint without harming their lives. Seeing that Su Che didn't kill him, Natasha Romanoff and Yelena immediately rushed to Dekov, who was about to skydive. During the period, the imitation master wanted to come over to stop him, but was entangled tightly by Yelena. After solving the last Black Widow very easily, Su Che glanced at the height through the cracked wall. Turning his head to see that Natasha Romanoff had tightly controlled Dekov, who was carrying a parachute. Then he flew out of the hole directly to the sky castle that landed rapidly, and slowly landed with his hands holding the castle. With super strength, although the air castle is full of power under the acceleration of gravity. But for Su Che, there is nothing worthy of attention. Tens of seconds later, Su Che who fell to the ground casually threw the sky castle aside. The huge castle like an aerospace aircraft carrier hit the ground heavily. Pooh. Spit out the splashed dust, Yelena glanced at Su Che, then turned to look at Natasha Romanoff and asked, "Are you sure his nickname is Silver Moon Knight, not Superman or something like that?" Pulling Dekov from the ground, Natasha Romanoff controls the operating system after all the Black Widows that will be controlled are released. Then he dragged Dekov down the air castle, and said to Yelena, "You have to know, Su is the most powerful superhero on Earth. So far I don't know where his upper limit is. Definitely, I don't know now, who is stronger between him and the Superman in the movie and comics." He dragged Decafu and threw it to the ground, looking at Dr. Dickey who was about to struggle to get up from the ground. Yelena stepped forward without any hesitation and kicked him, kicking him to the ground again. "Is this the guy who made you flee for so many years?" Walking over to see Dekov who fell on the ground, Su Che folded his arms and asked Natasha Romanoff with a smile. "Don't look at how fragile he is now, but this guy's heart is very ruthless, otherwise he wouldn't be able to control so many Black Widows. It is because of him that the Red House was established, and it is also because of him, Yelena and I, and they, that we will never have a baby of our own in this lifetime." Speaking of this, Natasha Romanoff suddenly raised her head and looked at Su Che. "Is Wanda not pregnant yet? I heard from Wanda that since she was 18 years old, you seem to have not taken any safety measures. It's been almost 4 years now, you and Wanda should go check it out if it's really bad." Hearing what Natasha Romanoff said, Su Che shook his head speechlessly, and then saw that Natasha Romanoff picked up the gun and aimed at Dekov and pulled the trigger without any hesitation. Oh God. Seeing the strange uncle in front of him lift the cloth covering, it turned out to be the Iron Man battle armor underneath. The child suddenly asked with surprise, "Is it Iron Man? My God, what's wrong with it?" "To be precise, I am Iron Man," corrected the words of the kid with the potato gun in front of him. Tony Stark glanced at his Mark armor. It lost its energy, or it was injured. "You know? Boy, it's been a long time since anyone has been able to push me to this point. After all, under normal circumstances, if there is an enemy that I can't deal with, then I will call my best friend Sue over, and then let my enemy know what will happen if they offend me." While talking, Tony Stark found a place to sit down, but no one thought that Sue took his girlfriend out for a trip, and then Steve, an idiot, went to Wakanda again without telling me. So much so that when I need them very much now, they are not by my side. Definitely, in fact, I can deal with this enemy, after all, I am Iron Man. You know, hey, don't break his finger. Well, you broke his finger, it's going to hurt so much now. Listening to Tony Stark's words, he looked at the fingers of Mark's battle armor that he had accidentally snapped off. The kid said to Tony with some shame, "Sorry. It's okay, I'll fix it, so you don't have to worry about it." Saying this, Gwyneth Stark suddenly shook his head mockingly. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." With a long sigh of relief, Tony Stark rubbed his cheeks. "Since I dragged the powerless Mark armor to find here on a snowy night, my heart became a mess." The strong sense of uncertainty and anxiety made Tony Stark a little unbearable. "This is also the reason why I talked so much nonsense with the child in front of me just now. After all, since the first generation wearing Mark armor escaped from the cave, I myself have been persecuted for a long time. It was his battle armor that gave him enough confidence. In plus later met Sue, and Sue became close friends. He has become his biggest and strongest confidence. As a result, now, the Langfang armor has lost its motivation, and his greatest confidence is no longer by his side. That's why I lost my sense of proportion for a while, like an ant that lost its direction and didn't know how to go." Taking a deep breath, he controlled his emotions. Tony Stark turned his head and glanced at the powerless armor. "Maybe I shouldn't be so big, I should wear the gloves of the nano armor. Then now is not the time to be yourself. Solving things is what you should do best. After all, I'm Tony Stark, Iron Man." Thinking of this, Tony Stark stood up and looked at the curious child. "I'm going to go shopping. Do you want to go together?" Facing the inquiry of the uncle in front of him, the child thought for a while, and then said, "If you were willing to tell me about you superheroes on the road, then maybe I'd like to show you the way and tell you where the store is." "Wow, you're blackmailing. That's not what a good boy should do. But okay, I accepted your blackmail." Listening to Tony Stark's words, the child suddenly smiled. "On the way. Yes, Silver Moon Knight, that is, Sue, he is the most powerful one among our Avengers, and he is also the trump card that all of us trust the most, and at the same time we can finally rely on it. Thor? After he took up the hammer of fate, he could indeed call lightning. Is it cool?" I don't think summoning lightning is a very cool thing. In fact, as long as we have the resources, we can use scientific methods to summon lightning. Oh, you said Sue is cool. I don't refute this point, after all Sue is really cool. Walking down the street at night, Tony Stark answered a series of questions from the curious kid. Through the question and answer with this child, Ned Stark's original nervous mood was completely relieved. I came to the store and bought some food and some materials I needed. Tony Stark bought another cell phone. Turning on the phone, he pressed the phone number that he had already memorized by heart. But after thinking about it for a long time, Tony Stark finally didn't choose to press it. Yes, although Sue is his biggest trump card, but he couldn't just ask Sue for help when he encountered anything. I am Tony Stark. I didn't die in that cave, where I escaped from. It must be fate, and there are more important tasks to be given to myself. So, some extremist guys will definitely not be able to kill themselves. Thinking of this, Tony Stark deleted this familiar number. Then he dialed Rhodes' number. Well, instead of looking for Sue, it is right to ask Rhodes to help. After all, Rhodes didn't travel all over the world with his girlfriend like Sue did. Fact, it's fake, it's all fake. Looking at the actor in front of him, Tony Stark gritted his teeth and cursed. Damn it. I actually broke into this villa guarded by many people because of this stupid actor. If he had known about the call to Rhodes, he would have called Sue directly. If Sue was here, then the matter would probably have been resolved long ago. Putting away the self-made gun, Tony Stark glanced at the actor, who raised his hand and surrendered. Just as he was about to turn around, a bald head suddenly appeared in front of him in the next second. Oh, Kong busy, damn it. Looking at the bald head, Tony Stark sighed speechlessly. Sure enough, I still use it myself. I said, buddy, maybe I can do what you say. Before Tony Stark finished speaking, the electric shock device hit Tony Stark directly in the next second. The powerful electric current made Tony Stark fall to the ground trembling all over. After passing out, he still didn't forget to give this guy who doesn't talk about martial arts a middle finger. Watching Tony Stark get knocked to the ground by his own taser. The bald head put away the electric shock device, then looked at the actor, and asked, Trev, what did you say to this guy? Nothing. Facing the question from the bald head, actor Trev immediately raised his hands. I really didn't say anything, I promise. No? Then why no alarm? Because I'm not afraid of him anymore. Facing the aggressive question from the bald head, Trev held a beer bottle. At first I thought he was very powerful, so powerful that he would scare me to pee my pants. But in fact you saw it too. Pointing to Tony Stark who passed out on the ground, Trev looked at the bald head and said seriously, their Avengers are definitely more famous than powerful. After losing that frightening armor, he is an ordinary person. Oh, at most, they are ordinary people who are less sensible. Looking at Trev, who was holding a beer can very seriously at the moment. The redness on the bald cheeks from extremists gradually disappeared. Well, Shi Tian was right. Tony Stark, who has lost his battle armor, is definitely more famous than powerful. I don't know what such a fool, the boss Killian, is worried about. But that's right, after all, the reason why Tony Stark has a great reputation is entirely due to his combat ability. Unlike other monsters in the Avengers alliance, especially the Silver Moon Knight named Su-Che. He is the most terrifying existence. The reason why people like myself dare to take action against Tony Stark at this time. The big reason is that, according to intelligence, the Silver Moon Knight is not at the Avengers alliance base, but is traveling all over the world with his girlfriend. The Silver Moon Knight wasn't there, and neither was the guy who turned into a big green guy when he got angry. Thor, hammer in hand, returns to Asgard. Hawkeye is missing, it should be to perform some mission. Steve Rogers even went to unknown places. Even Natasha Romanoff, who has the title of Black Widow, is not in New York. At this moment, except for Tony Stark, the other members of the Avengers alliance are not in New York. It is precisely because of this that the boss Killian decided to attack Tony Stark in advance. After all, if there are other people in the Avengers alliance, then they are considered to be people who have gained super strength because of extremists. It is estimated that those members of the Avengers alliance did not do it all in one pot. Okay, you can continue to stay here honestly. Glancing at Trev, the bald head bent down and picked up Tony Stark, who was fainting on the ground. With the blessing of extremists, carrying a Tony Stark is not difficult at all. Watching the bald head carry away the fainting Tony Stark, Trev shrugged his shoulders, picked up a can of beer and drank more. I am just an actor they hired, so I will not participate in them. But having said that, Tony Stark is pretty good. In a base with layers of guards, he was able to break in single-handedly with a self-made gadget. Well, just not very smart. The moment I saw him, I reminded him more than once that this was a trap. Why can't he understand? After half an hour. Hiss. Gradually woke up from the fainting state. Feel the discomfort caused by being hit by the electric current. After Tony Stark took a few deep breaths and gradually suppressed this feeling. Only then slowly opened his eyes. If we say that the place where the actor Trev is located is relatively normal in the castle, then the place where I was detained was more like a crude factory. The 3 windows were surrounded by layers of iron shelves, and the surrounding area was empty except for garbage. As for the front, it is a simple laboratory with blue light. On the laboratory chair, a woman seemed to be researching something. After shaking the wrist tied to the iron frame, he found that he couldn't break free at all. Tony Stark looked at the woman who had turned around in the chair. He turned his head speechlessly. Well, the woman in front of me is the biologist who warned me before my villa was attacked. At the same time, she is also a woman who has had some relationship with him. Very familiar, right? Looking at the speechless Tony Stark, the biologist said with a smile, "It's not the first time you have played this kind of binding game." "Yeah, it's really memorable, but I seem to have switched roles with you." "Sorry, that wasn't on my mind. But you still take Killian's business card." "Correct me. What I took was money." He looked at Tony Stark standing upright in front of him, tied to an abandoned iron frame bed. The female biologist said seriously, "Really? Then do I want to say congratulations on becoming a rich man?" With a speechless laugh, Tony Stark said seriously, "You should know that even if you do this, you will never be able to escape from this cage." "You sure?" "Yes. But now you are the one who is bound in the cage, and I am free." After bickering for a few words, the biologist stood up from his chair. Walking towards Tony Stark, he said, "I have experienced so many things, Tony, I am about to succeed. The ultimate biological experiment has actually stabilized, and my experiment is coming soon. And I told you they blew up in the streets." Tony's angry roar interrupted the female biologist. "That's what I saw with my own eyes. Their blood stained the wall, and their explosion hurt the lives of many innocent people. What you call success is just deceiving yourself." Looking at the somewhat angry Tony Stark in front of him, the female biologist was silent for a moment, then nodded and said, "Yes, I know this. But Tony, since you know it's not complete, fix it for me, fix extremis. Tony, you have this ability, your talent and IQ are the top on this planet. If you are willing, then the ultimate biological experiment you modify will definitely be the most perfect." With that said, the female biologist took out an old, somewhat yellowed business card. The name on the business card is Tony Stark. Turning the back of the business card over, Tony saw it. Behind the business card is a set of equations. Looking at the familiar font of this equation, Tony Stark was slightly taken aback. "So, I wrote this equation?" "Definitely." Looking at Tony Stark, the female biologist said seriously, "That morning 9 years ago." "Sorry, I only remember evenings, not mornings, and I write a lot, so these things. Do not you remember?" Looking at Tony's appearance, the female biologist frowned. "At that time, my experiment reached a critical point, and I couldn't find a way out. At that time, it was your reminder. You just glanced at the experiment I said. I just wrote this set of equations very casually. You know this is a dilemma that has troubled me for a long time, but you easily solved it. You don't remember? How can you not remember?" "Hey, calm down." Seeing the female biologist whose mood gradually became irritable, Tony Stark said slowly, "You used to be a very good scientist, and you also used to have a very rich imagination and talent. Most importantly, you have a very good heart. But look at you now, why did you become like this? Did you know? The person who wakes up with me every morning has a soul, not a machine that only knows how to study and study." Wow, it's really a very affectionate speech, and I'm so moved. As soon as Tony finished speaking, the female biologist shook her head. On the next stairs, Killian came down. "So I said, since you announced that you were Iron Man a few years ago, your speech level has surpassed your scientific research results." In front of Tony Stark, Killian smiled and said, "Do you know what my dad said? One of his favorite sayings during his lifetime was that the early bird gets the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese." Looking at Killian in front of him, Tony Stark frowned. Damn it. If this guy could come a few minutes late, then he might be able to convince the female biologist to help him untie his tied wrists, and then take him out of here. Well, it seems that what Sue said, Batman's talk can't restore calm to Gotham, is true. We should still use Superman's method to completely wipe out the evil. Thinking of this, Tony Stark looked at Killian and said, "So, are you still brooding about that night that year, when you waited for me on the rooftop all night?" Facing Tony's question, Killian spread his arms and smiled, "Oh Kong, how could I be angry with you? Seriously, I should thank you. It is you who gave me the best emotion in the world, and that is despair. At the reception that night, you asked me to wait for you on the roof, right? Actually, for the first 20 minutes, I really thought you would come to me. At this point, Killian shrugged. And then, for the next hour, I really wanted to take a step forward and jump off the roof. You should know what I mean. Facing Killian's words, Tony Stark was silent for a while. I've actually been thinking about what you said just now. The second mouse got cheese, so what happened to the first mouse? Seeing Tony Stark's lack of cooperation, Killian was not angry. Instead, he continued. At that time, I was looking at the night sky of this city, and no one knew I was there, no one would see me, and no one would notice me. Then, there was a thought that stayed with me from that day on. That's hiding yourself, Tony. Since then, this has become my motto, Tony. It is much, much safer to rule behind the scenes than to stand in front of the stage. Because once the devil has a face, people will have a target. Listening to Killian's eloquent words, Tony Stark, whose hands and feet were bound, said, "Your idea is really special." Yeah. Hearing Tony Stark's evaluation, Killian went to the chair and sat down. Then he took out a small box and prepared to open it. Oh, by the way, you should have seen that actor, right? Yeah, I've seen it, it's really a man's talent. Listening to Tony's evaluation, Killian laughed and said, I know, he is a bit exaggerated sometimes, but it can't be entirely my fault. Because he is just an actor in a stage play. They say his leer is the glory of Croydon. Anyway, the point is, since the guy with the hammer came down from the sky. Since the Silver Moon Knight appeared in this world wearing a cloak, all understatement has been out of fashion since then. I believe you should be very clear about this. What's your next step? Looking at Killian, Tony Stark asked, or what exactly are you trying to do? Do what? Looking at the box in front of him, Killian smiled and said, it's definitely a gift in return, the same gift, to repay your kindness to me. As he spoke, Killian threw 3 iron balls to the ground. When the iron ball rolled down to Tony Stark's feet, Killian pressed the holographic projection. In the holographic projection, Pepper is tied to the operating table at this moment, and the red light from the upper body is constantly surging in the body. No, this is despair, the kindness you gave me back then. Definitely, the hologram you're watching is live, but now it's up to you to decide whether to let her take it and make it the ultimate experiment. I have to say, if she doesn't accept it, then she will explode now. Well, the effect of the explosion is still very spectacular. You should be very clear about this. Fact. Looking at the holographic projection, Pepper is being tortured by extremists at the moment. Tanya Stark kept struggling with his bound hands and feet. This was the first time he felt extremely regretful. If he had been attacked in the villa back then, he would have called Sue for help. Then Pepper will not suffer such torture because of himself. Damn it, if Sue was here, then Killian, an idiot, wouldn't be able to stir up any waves at all. Constantly struggling with the bound body, Tony Stark swore to Suche. As long as he breaks free, he will definitely give him a hard punch. Hey, don't be so excited. He stepped forward and looked at the struggling Tony Stark. Killian stretched out his hand to grab Tony's neck, and the veins under the skin of his face flashed red like extremists. I just gave you back the despair you gave me back then. Now, you have to experience this suffocating sense of hopelessness for yourself. Let him go. Right behind Killian's stranglehold on Tony's neck. The female biologist behind him suddenly spoke. Turning her head, she watched the female biologist aim a small syringe at her own neck. At the same time, he threatened Killian. I said, let him go. Hey Maya, what are you doing? 1200 milliliters. Facing Killian, Maya said very seriously, it only takes half the amount, it's enough to kill me. So, let him go. Seeing Maya betray him, Killian spread his hands, then turned to look at Tony Stark. She is testing how gentle my temper is. After finishing speaking, Killian turned his head and stretched out his hand to the female biologist. Maya, give me the syringe. If I die, Killian, what will happen to your fighters? What will happen to the results of your research? Don't be like this, please. Maya, listen to me and give me something. What about you? What about yourself? You know what happens if you get overheated. In the face of Maya, who doesn't give in at all, and wants to let Tony Stark go. Killian suppressed the anger in his heart. With great difficulty, I tricked Tony Stark into here and arrested him. With great difficulty, I pushed Tony Stark into a desperate situation. But now, the partner who has been by my side has chosen to betray me, threatening his life to let him go. Tony Stark. Kong is busy. If you let Tony Stark go, then waiting for yourself will definitely be the most direct revenge for the entire Avengers. That's right, I have extremists, and my strength is far beyond the scope of ordinary people. But in Avengers, there are many people who crush themselves to death like ants. Whether it's the guy holding the hammer or the guy who turned into a green beast, he can easily crush himself and his soldiers to death. Not to mention the most powerful Silvermoon Knight. So, no matter what, I can't let Tony Stark go. Taking a deep breath, he suppressed the anger in his heart. Killian looked at Maya and said very seriously, "Maya, give me the things, don't threaten me." I said, "Let him go." Faced with Killian's last warning, Maya, who always thought she was very important to him, did not listen to the advice at all. That brought a gleam of disappointment to Killian's eyes. Turning his head to look at Tony Stark, Killian said, "See? This is human nature. The better you treat a person, the more this person thinks that she is very important to you." The voice fell. Killian took out a pistol from his waist without any hesitation and pulled the trigger on Maya. Boom. Maya, who was shot, knelt down on the ground powerlessly and looked at Killian in disbelief. She couldn't believe that Killian would actually shoot herself. Doesn't he want a stable extremis? Glancing at Maya lying in a pool of blood, Killian turned his head to look at Tony Stark. The good news is that the highly dangerous condition of our experiment has actually been treated. Look at Killian, who even has a smile on his face. Tony Stark couldn't believe it. Moments later, "You're a lunatic." "No, Tony, I'm a dreamer." While talking, Killian walked up the stairs. "But you were right, I do have a lunatic, but tonight he will make an appearance. Oh, by the way, I actually know about the fact that you called Rhodes for support. He was caught by us when he was wearing a battle armor and just landed on the plane. So, Tony, get a taste of despair." After speaking, Killian turned and left. Damn it. Watching Killian turn away, Tony Stark cursed under his breath. Looking at Maya, who fell on the ground not far away, she then leaned her head on the iron frame that bound her. Damn it, I seem to have really overreached this time. Although Tony never believed that he would die here. He even knew that when his battle armor was fully charged, Riding would fly over to save him. But if there is still a chance, then I will definitely call Sue in advance. One must know that Sue is always his biggest trump card. The other side of the castle. Rhodes' battle armor was bound by iron chains, and some people were cutting it with machines. It's just that no matter how the machine sparks, the battle armor is not damaged at all. "Good afternoon, doctors." Killian walked over with his hands in his pockets, looked at his busy subordinates and asked, "How is it?" "Can't open it, boss. This suit of armor was built by Tony Stark, and the materials used are the strongest in the world. So according to our current technological means, it is impossible to open this armor at all." Faced with Killian's boss's inquiries, his subordinates rushed to report. I knew it. Listening to the reports from his subordinates, Killian didn't have any surprises. Although Tony Stark gave himself a lot of humiliation and despair at the beginning. But even Killian himself has to admit that Tony Stark is indeed a genius. So it would be disappointing if the battle armor he developed was opened so easily. He took off his coat and handed it to his subordinates. Killian came to Rhodes' armor. "Hello, Colonel Rhodes. Are you sure you can't come out?" Inside the armor. Rhodes, who is not yet a Skrull, hid in the armor, listening to Killian's words outside the armor, and didn't care at all. Damn, I was too careless. That's why I was caught by Killian's men as soon as I got off the plane. But it doesn't matter, with this armor, even if Killian uses missiles, he won't suffer any damage. And myself. What's going on? Damn it, how could I feel hotter and hotter? This is impossible. You must know that Tony's armor is made of high temperature resistant materials. Even the sea of AA fire won't affect him in any way. Outside the armor. Killian put his hands on the battle armor, and the inside of his hands began to turn red instantly. In just less than 2 seconds, everyone could even see the bones through Killian's red and transparent hands. "Don't worry, Colonel Rhodes, you will come out." While heating up the armor, Killian said with a smile. Inside the armor. Listening to the system siren from the armor, Rhodes frowned and endured the high temperature. Killian's subordinates came over and asked Killian, "Boss, do you want to dismantle this armor?" "Definitely, I've had this idea since I saw one of the Tony Stark guys announcing that he was Iron Man. But I think you should fix it. By the way, I will fly a helicopter to the base camp and take Ms. Pepper. I will leave it to you." Listening to what Killian boss said, his subordinates said, "Definitely no problem, but Ms. Pepper is still in the second stage." While the two were chatting, Rhodes of Jonziasi had an extremely painful expression. Under the extremely high temperature, he finally couldn't bear to open the battle armor. Seeing Rhodes running out of the battle armor, Killian laughed instantly. It seems that Tony Stark's armor is actually not as powerful as imagined. The other side. Dee Dee, Dee Dee, Dee Dee, as the red children's watch on the table began to ring a bell. Tony Stark, whose hands and feet were bound, raised his head instantly. Killian's two subordinates who were sitting next to him on the low stool raised their heads, then got up and came to the table. Picking up the red children's watch on the table, one of his subordinates waved his wish gently. "Hey, be careful, this is a limited edition." Seeing the rude looks of Killian's subordinates, Tony Stark reminded him. Listening to Tony's words, the two men guarding him looked at each other. "Hey, the guy with the ponytail, how far is Nashi from Miami?" Listening to Tony Stark's inquiry, the ponytailed boy and his companion looked at each other. 832 miles. Oh, not bad, it seems that your knowledge reserve is quite high. Hearing Tony's praise, the guy with ponytail and pistol said to his companion, "Actually, I'm quite smart, but can you turn off this children's watch? Hey, if you break the watch it's yours." Seeing the actions of these two younger brothers, Tony Stark immediately warned. Seeing Tony with his hands and feet bound, he didn't dare to threaten him. The bald boy casually threw the children's watch on the ground, then raised his foot and stepped on it. "Wow. Well, in fact, you guys have a big deal. Do you know? Let me tell you the truth, this children's watch belongs to my friend's sister, so since you have destroyed this watch, I have to kill you first." Looking at Killian's bald boy, Tony threatened hard. Facing the threat of Tony Stark, the two little brothers looked at each other, looked at the gun in their hands with their bald heads, and then at Tony Stark who was restrained. Then he felt a little funny and asked, "So, how are you going to kill me?" Tony Stark's threats seemed so funny to them. A guy whose hands and feet are bound and who will lose his life at any time. To threaten two guys with guns. This is literally the biggest and funniest joke they've heard this year. "Don't worry yet." Looking at the two guys, Tony Stark said, "I promise what I said must be true, just like this." As he said that, Tony Stark's bound hands instantly made a movement of using the palm energy cannon. However, in the eyes of Killian's two younger brothers, Tony Stark's actions are more like funny. Wow. The ponytail boy watched Tony use funny moves, with a serious expression on his face. Then he glanced at his companion. He really wanted to know if the guy in front of him was in a desperate situation and was frightened stupid, so he made such an idiotic move. "Hey, ponytail guy, don't look at me like an idiot. Trust me, you're going to be bleeding in no time. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Watch Tony Stark perform." The little ponytail frowned, then looked at his bald-headed companion. "Why do we take the job of guarding such a guy? I feel embarrassed for him." Well, Tony Stark wasn't embarrassed in the slightest. Instead, he said seriously, "Okay, I'll give you a chance to escape, put down your weapon immediately, and then tie yourself to a stool, and I won't kill you." Why? Listening to Tony's go crazy, even started counting down again. The little ponytail sighed, he was absolutely sure now that the Tony Stark in front of him had gone crazy. "I'm really scared by you, so now, you should shut up. Are you sure you don't want to surrender? Don't say I didn't give you a chance. Shut up." As soon as the ponytail boy's voice fell, the next second Tony Stark instantly accelerated the countdown to 5 numbers. As Tony's voice fell, there was a sudden bang from the window behind him, and then the nano armor glove flew over and immediately put it on Tony's wristbound hand. Boom. A white light beam instantly knocked the little ponytail into the air. Tanya Stark, wearing the gloves of the nano armor, broke free from the restraints. "I gave you a chance." At the same time, inside the Avengers Alliance base. Take the Quinjet fighter just down. Before Suche and Wanda and Natasha Romanoff returned home. I saw Nick Fury walking over with a serious face. Why is the expression so serious? Did something serious happen during the time I was traveling with Wanda? Looking at Nick Fury with a serious face, Suche asked with a smile. "It's Tony." Looking at Suche who just stepped off the Quinjet fighter. Nick Fury said with a very serious expression, 4 days ago, Tony Stark's villa by the sea was attacked by missiles, and the entire villa was destroyed. Tony Stark disappeared 3 days ago, followed by Pepper Potts. People from have been searching for these 3 days, but unfortunately, they didn't find the location of Tony Stark himself and Pepper Potts. Hearing what Nick Fury said, Suche nodded. After returning to the villa, he took a sip of soda water from the refrigerator, and then asked Nick Fury, "Have you investigated the location where Tony last appeared?" "Definitely. According to the data sent back from the satellite, the place where Tony last appeared is here." The location where Tony Stark last appeared was shown to Suche in the form of holographic projection. Nick Fury continued. But before Tony disappeared, he called James Rhodes for help. Unfortunately, Rhodes also lost track. Obviously, they should have some problems. Looking at the address given by the projection of the whole department, Suche thought for a while, and instantly understood what happened to Tuo Ding. Killian's extremis. Thinking of this, Suche nodded. I see, by the way, didn't you call Tony? His communication was cut off and he was not reachable at all. By the way, Steve will also come back from Wakanda, when the time comes. No, leave it to me. I know what happened to Tony. While talking, Suche took out a pair of black glasses and put them on. On Saturday, activate the Stark Industrial Satellite, to search for the location of Tony and Pepper. At the same time, try to see if you can contact Tony. Yes sir. Facing Suche's instructions, Saturday activated the Stark Industrial Satellite without any hesitation, and at the same time began to try to contact Tony's communication. As soon as the communication was turned on, Tony Stark's voice came directly from the opposite side. Hearing Tony Stark's voice, Nick Fury on the side was startled first, and then a black line at the end. Damn. I made the mistake of experience thinking that Tony Stark couldn't be reached after several attempts. I can't get in touch with him at all. Hey dude, why did you remember to call me? Huh? Called me on Saturday, you're back from your trip with Wanda? The other end of the communication is very noisy. The sound of the battle armor is mixed with the sound of shooting. There were even screams from time to time. Clearly, a series of battles are taking place over there. I just came back, and Nick Fury is here with me. He said that you and Pepper are missing. There is a lot of noise on your side. Do you need my help? A palm energy cannon knocks the guy who wants to attack him into the air. After watching this guy hit the wall, bursts of red light began to glow in the whole body, and then began to explode with a bang. Seeing this scene, Tony Stark suddenly felt his teeth ache. Well, the next thing I have to face is a group of guys like this. Thinking of this, Tony Stark immediately said, definitely buddy, I need your support here, damn it, that bastard Killian actually captured Peepo, and even used that damned desperate test on her. Dude, I'll send you the address coordinates, I need your help here. This time, Wang Ni didn't dare to be careless. If Pepper has any problems due to his carelessness, Tony felt that he would never forgive himself in his life. No problem. Looking at the coordinates sent by Tony, I found that it is not far away, just over 1,000 miles. Suche said directly, get ready, I'll be right there. He took off his glasses and glanced at Nick Fury with black lines on his face. I've received Tony's coordinates, I'm going to support him. After finishing speaking, Suche smiled at Wanda, then the whole person soared into the sky, and disappeared in the Avengers Alliance base in an instant. Is Extremis strong? According to the perception of Tony and Rhodes, it is indeed very strong. At least in terms of the result that after Tony assembled a large number of steel armors, he was still damaged a lot of armors. Extremis is really strong. But for Suche who came to the rescue, the group of guys with Extremis are actually very weak. At least, when Tony and Rhodes watched Suche kill the leader of Extremis very easily. Rhodes couldn't help looking at Tony next to him. If you said earlier that you could find Sue to rescue him, why did you let me come here? I was still heated inside the battle armor, almost turning into a steamed crab. Listening to Rhodes' complaints, Tony Stark shrugged his shoulders. When I was first tricked to come here, Sue and Wanda were still traveling all over the world. Who knew he could come back so soon? With that said, Tony Stark stood up from the iron shelf and said to Rhodes, damn it, I also said that if Sue doesn't come back, I won't propose. After I go back this time, it seems that I can't escape the fate of proposing like Pepper. You should have proposed. After all, Pepper has been waiting for you for so many years. Listening to Tony's words, the relaxed Rhodes spoke with difficulty. There was Suche, the Silver Moon Knight, the most powerful Avenger among the Avengers. Naturally, Tony and the others were rescued intact. After being rescued, there was no party that day, and I wanted to check my body and the like. After added Tony and saw Suche, he always had a plan buried in his heart for a long time. So during this time, the entire Avengers lived very peacefully. After a few months of this rare peace, Wani took the initiative to hold a party inside the Avengers Alliance. And then, on top of the party, under the witness of all the superheroes in the Avengers Alliance, Tony and Pepper proposed. Seriously, apart from Suche and Steve, you wouldn't believe it. Tony, this guy actually proposed to Pepper. So much so that when Tony got down on one knee and took out the engagement ring, even Nick Fury, who was invited to the party, uttered a swear word in surprise and turned into a mage. But everyone sent blessings to Tony and Peepo. Tony Stark proposed, and everyone thought that his and Pepper's wedding would be held soon. But no one expected that Sue and Wang Tian would be the first to hold a wedding in the Avengers Alliance. Suche actually proposed to Wanda, during the process of traveling around the world. And there's no other way, if she doesn't get married, Wanda's belly will soon grow bigger. As the first one to get married in the Avengers Alliance. The wedding of Su Che and Wanda has received the attention and blessings of countless people. On the wedding day, after all the ceremonies have been held, Su Che, who was wearing a suit, looked at Steve, whose eyes were twinkling with envy after sending his blessings. The two chatted on the lawn. If you had the chance to make amends, go back 70 years, Steve, would you give up everything you have now and go back to the past? Looking at Steve, Su Che asked with a smile, I have no idea. Listening to Su Che's inquiry, Steve looked up at the dazzling and warm sun. After a while, he slowly said, for me, this world after 7,000 years is actually very good. The variety of food is very rich, and technology is very convenient. Even diseases that were incurable before have become very simple things in this era. Taking a deep breath, Steve turned his head and looked at Su Che. Seriously, I really cherish the time I spend with you, fighting against aliens together, and fighting side by side to protect the Earth. But, I still owe that girl of mine a date. I don't know if this era needs me, or if I am destined to come to this era because of some things. But man, if possible, I want to go back and make up for that dance I owe. Facing Steve's words, Su Che smiled and patted his shoulder, then didn't say much. In fact, Su Che didn't even need to ask, in Steve's mind, how bad his real regrets are. In fact, if given a choice, Steve would rather give up everything now and return to the era that belonged to him. After Su Che and Wanda's wedding ended, the two left the Avengers Alliance base again. Continue traveling around the world. During this period, nothing major happened. Well, if it has to be counted as a major event, then Wanda gave birth to 2 babies for Su Che. There is a research in the field of science, if either the father or the mother has the genes of twins, then the next generation born will have a high chance of being twins as well. Facts have proved that this statement is correct. At least, when Wanda gives birth to the next twins. Su Che suddenly felt that perhaps this world was his own. The feeling of blood connection almost made Su Che go crazy with excitement. I wrote 7 diaries in one couplet, because of how excited I was. Well, this also allowed Su Che's strength to reach the real level at once, surpassing the limit of the level single universe. Following the birth of Wanda and Su Che's son and daughter, Tony and Pepper got married early under the influence of Su Che. Morgan Jr. was also born the following year. Well, 6 years earlier than the original timeline. In these years, although some things have often happened in this world, overall, they have not reached the big event that can make the Avengers Alliance collectively mobilize. Until 3 years later, the guy who killed the room came to the Earth. Originally in this world, Thanos seemed like an unsolvable existence. You can also have the Silver Moon Knight Su Che, who is stronger than the other Avengers Alliance superheroes in the level single universe. As soon as Thanos led the alien army to land on the Earth, he went directly to the Avengers Alliance superhero led by Su Che. To be honest, if it was in the past, then Su Che might really make the flickering event caused by the snapping of fingers happen. But now after having Wanda and a bunch of lovely children. This time, due to the battle against Miele, he didn't hold back. This directly led to the alien race led by Thanos, not to mention gathering 6 infinite gems and snapping their fingers. Even escaping from the Earth is impossible. Thanos may be very powerful. But facing Su Che, he is really not qualified enough. With Su Che who surpasses the level single universe and can tear space rifts without even using space gems. Killed Thanos very easily. So in this battle, Thanos was almost killed by Su Che before Thanos could react. After dealing with Thanos, Su Che put away Thanos' Infinity Gauntlet and his collection of infinite gems. At the same time, I asked Tony to help build a nano armor Infinity Gauntlet. At the same time, he borrowed Time Gem again. In fact, Thanos' snap of his fingers delayed the appearance event by 5 years. But this time, Touche removed Mihao neatly. So he took the gloves that gathered 6 infinite gems and went to the place where the gods appeared in person. Whether it's the so-called God group or it wants to be revived. Or anyone who wants to stop or destroy the Earth. This time, Su Che will never hold back. At least, for his wife Wanda and his lovely children. Su Che decided to solve all the troubles in advance. Facts have proved that Su Che can still do it. The ability blessing given by the Black Gold Diary is coupled with the power of 6 infinite gems, directly causing God appearance to collapse. At the same time, after solving this big trouble, Su Che found Loki from the Time Administration. Then the Kangxi meeting was solved. Various mutants may have very high technology. But they were originally a joke to Su Che. Even dealing with them is not as difficult as dealing with God appearance and Thanos. After clearing all the crises that the Earth will face in the future, Su Che then returned to the Avengers Alliance base and began to enjoy parent-child life. Oh, right. it is worth mentioning that under the suggestion of Su Che, this guy Tony still developed a time machine that can go back to the past. Then, after having a farewell party for half a month, Steve and everyone in the Avengers Alliance gave fist bumps and hugs. Then, in this era of Avengers Alliance, there is no Captain America Steve Rogers anymore. The dance he owed can be danced again. Time flies, and Tien-Er's time flies by. Why? I should be the captain of the second-generation Avengers Alliance. Su Yao looked at his sister, who his mother said was born 10 seconds later than him. Some said unconvinced. Just face the sister's eye attack. After a forced stop for a while, Su Yao, who was only 15 years old, said helplessly, okay, you are my sister and the captain of the second-generation Avengers Alliance, okay. HMPH, that's about the same. Hearing her brother's words, Su Yao snorted in satisfaction, and then looked at little Morgan in armor. Don't look at me. Elder sister Alice, Yagasha and I have always supported you as the captain of our second-generation Avengers Alliance. Holding the daughter of Thor and Jane Foster, and the adopted daughter of Gear, Morgan Jr. said very seriously. Me too. On the sidelines, Black Panther's son and daughter nodded, and Ant-Man's daughter also unhesitatingly supported Su Yao in becoming the captain of the second-generation Avengers Alliance. Well, watching everyone support their sister. Su Yao sighed and turned to look at the guy with the same green skin as his father. Do you think our second-generation Avengers Alliance can surpass our parents' generation? Before the Hulk's son could speak, Su Yao answered directly. There's nothing that can't be surpassed. Don't forget, Dad was able to handle Thanos, the Celestial Group and the Kangxi Conference back then. We inherit the abilities of our parents, and we can also protect the Earth. Speaking of this, Su Yao looked at the crowd with her hands on her hips. Everyone, from today onwards, our second-generation Avengers Alliance will be established directly. Our first target is those Skrulls. Although it was the fault of Nick Fury back then, Aunt Natasha Romanoff is in charge of now. We can't watch Aunt Natasha Romanoff cause chaos on the Earth because of the Skrulls, and be discussed by those idiots in the World Security Council. Avengers, assemble. Following Su Yao's order, all members of the second-generation Avengers Alliance instantly stood up and assembled. Well, compared to the first-generation Avengers Alliance, these second-generation Avengers Alliances are more willing to surround Su Che and Wanda's daughter Su Yao. Follow her orders. No way, growing up together, these second-generation Avengers Alliance members have long been used to listening to Su Yao, the big sister. Watch the second-generation Avengers Alliance members strike out. Not far away, Tony Stark, holding a red wine glass, looked at Su Che and asked, "Are you sure you don't want us to do it?" "No. Let them play slowly." Look at his own son and daughter, and Avengers. Age of Ultron on behalf of these juniors with doting eyes. Su Che said with a smile. After all, there is Peter Parker's little Spider-Man to help, and the Skrulls are actually not strong. Even if it can't be solved, aren't there still us old guys? Don't forget, the world is now dominated by their young people. It's time for us, the first generation of old guys, to enjoy our lives. After listening to Su Che's words, Tony Stark shrugged his shoulders. That's right, after all, the world is dominated by young people now. But having said that, I really miss Steve. Maybe we should use a time machine to go back in time and see how Steve is doing now. Hearing what Tony said, Yinjozi smiled at Wang Tian. He raised his head and looked at the blue sky and white clouds. Although the time is different, we live under the same sky after all. I think he will be as happy as us.